Good morning, good morning. It's another fine day here. We're heading to Massachusetts again to peek in the courtroom of Judge Beverly Cannone for Massachusetts versus Cannone. This will be day 17 for me because we don't cover the jury selection. And man, third week, third week, going into the third week. Hey Maggie, good morning. Let's just get our fan up here so we don't miss anything. Well, there's a few things I wanted to talk about from the last couple of days' testimony with the medical examiner because, once we watch all of the testimony and we hear the direct for the Commonwealth and the cross examinations from the defense, it takes a little bit for me to go back and forth. I don't like to expand too much right away on where I think things are going or anything. And at this point in the trial, well, there's been a lot of evidence put forward, and I had been waiting for the medical examiner because I actually believe that the medical examiner is actually the most neutral party in all of the in all courts that have a medical examiner actually testify. They have a lot of weight put on their testimony by the jury, usually because they are a professional and they have dealt in cases of crime against the victim. They deal with the body and the autopsy and the events. Um, the body tells the story. And in this case, the body does tell the story. And the body does say that there was trauma to John O'Keefe's head. How that trauma was inflicted is not necessarily something a medical examiner can say. Sometimes there's evidence of it if there are knife wounds or bullet hole, if there are other things on the body that lead you to it, some type of disease, anything like that. But in this case, the medical examiner testified to hypothermia and that it was the head wound that led to his death. How it actually occurred is not necessarily her department or where they will go without sufficient evidence. Now, she did receive information from the investigators of the case. Well, what could actually lead to it for what she saw, she's not going to make a determination. So at that point, that part of the testimony benefits both sides. And let's be honest, that's a fact. If you cannot say that it appears that he was hit by a car, well, that doesn't benefit the Commonwealth, does it? It kind of benefits the defense. And if they say it doesn't necessarily state that he was beaten up either, that doesn't necessarily benefit the defense, nor actually help the Commonwealth push back against it. So it's kind of a neutral statement. And I admire a professional like Dr. Irene Scordibella, rather, for actually sticking to what she could actually determine. And she did not, under great pressure from the defense, change her testimony. Under great pushing back on her medical expertise on what hypothermia was or what she should call ulcerations, she stuck to what she knows. And they didn't make a lot of headway that way. But it's clear that it'll be up to the jury now because she could not determine how these injuries happened, but she was very clear about the injuries. Now, it would be different if she found embedded taillight plastic in his body. I mean, that would be a clear indicator and match up to facts that were given to her outside of the body from the investigators. But there wasn't. All of that was in the clothing, and it's not up to her to analyze the clothing. She's analyzing the body. So it's kind of a neutral area, and I respect that because the science is there, you know. But one thing I did find that actually may benefit the Commonwealth a little more than the defense. I don't think all of her testimony was neutral, because when it came to the what she called abrasions on the arm, which appear to look like scratch marks, which the defense is saying clearly they're going to bring an expert to say that they were caused by a dog, that was a dog attack. Those are scratches and punctures from a dog. We heard testimony from during a hearing from Dr. Marie Russell insisting that those were wounds from a dog, that a dog, may have bit him. But here's the thing, dog bites puncture. And the medical examiner said there was no depth to any of those marks. There were abrasions from falling or scratching. They are surface level with no depth whatsoever to them. No punctures of the skin. They could be caused from brushing up against something sharp, from falling and rubbing against something. That could happen to your arm falling against something, especially something sharp. But it stuck out to me that there were no punctures, that there was no depth to those wounds whatsoever. And as hard as she got pushed back on, she would not change her testimony on that. She said if there was any depth, she would have measured it. She would have indicated it. They were just saying, like, well, just because you didn't write it down doesn't mean it isn't so. And basically, in not exactly the words I would use, because I'm going to say she just pushed back and said, no, if it was there, I would have wrote it. So, no, that's not true. It is so. They are not punctured. There is no depth. They are abrasions. It's like not even considered deep scratches. So that kind of stood out. And it was more towards the favor of the Commonwealth. So basically, we had 2 days of a witness that could confirm the injuries and why he died, but not how those injuries were occurred. And I find that to be credible testimony because to me, it's completely neutral and beyond biased. And I hope that sticks out to the jury, showing that this case isn't all about, corruption and misleading testimony. Like, she really did stick to her guns in regards to what she could actually state and what she couldn't. So it's very, as frustrating as it was to have, Robert Alessi go on the way he did. I actually don't think he made a lot of headway. And I think based on what I saw on the socials, which, you got to take with a grain of salt, I will say that most of the posting on the socials that I look at is from journalists and reporters, those in the courtroom. Oh no. How did the feed go black like that? Okay, wait. I'm going to have to wait. I may have to look for another feed. Let's just see what's out there. Because court should be coming in, and I can't imagine why that feed would go black like that. Just, oh, they all did. Okay, I'm looking at all of them right now are pretty well black. Yeah. Okay. Including Law and Crime. Oh, Law and Crimes just came back up. Let's see if theirs do. Okay. Should be coming up in a second. Hopefully. There is another feed. And if anything, we'll have to use the Law and Crime feed. Let's just say. Nope, our feed came back up too. All right, there we go. Thank you for the coffee there, Shill. I do appreciate you, love. It is so nice. Hello, Tomorrow Kyoto and Book Lover. Everybody came in. Sue, nice to see you too. It's nice to have a few people here to keep me company. I've just been rattling on, not paying much attention. During some of the breaks, I've got some really funny TikTok links to show you guys, I am really cracking up at the ones where they recant the testimonies in some of the scenes using babies for all of the players in the Karen Reed trial. It is cracking me up. I don't care whose side they are, whether they're like, pro Karen Reed or not. Hey, doctor, almost a doctor. Wait, oh, are you a doctor now? I'm pretty sure you must be at this point. But hey, good to see you. And it's so nice of you to come in and say hi. I've really missed that whole crew from Hereticals. I really have. I so miss hanging out with you guys every once in a while. And just every time we all got together and streamed, it was a good time. Good people, good conversations. So open-minded, you know. Yeah. So it's really good to see you, Matthew. I hope everything's going well. I am now graduation on Monday, so technically I need a new name. Oh, how about now a doctor? Yes, now a doctor is a good name for your account. So you only have to change one word and you could keep your account. You just change the word. Absolutely. And congratulations on your graduation. And I hope the ceremony Monday is like wonderful. I hope you're celebrating largely, because what an accomplishment. What an accomplishment all this time. Yes, dedication and well deserved. So congratulations. I'm so happy. I couldn't be happier for you. Like, I think that's absolutely wonderful. Yes, the chat's celebrating for you too. The woohoo's in there. So now you got to find a job. Yeah, that's the hard part, right? Your job was graduating, and now it's like getting some work. Well, I think in your field you're going to find something. You're bright, you're brilliant, and you're charming. I'm just a little biased, just a little. It sounds like Cont is ready to start, though.
You are unmuted.
Thank you.
So
I need to see counsel at sidebar, please.
I didn't even get to ask you guys if you wanted to make a bet if there would be sidebar or not, because definitely there is. That's the first one of the day. And of course, yesterday we had 12 and I lost the bet with my yay. I did pay my 10,000 ovo to him. I did right away. Well, the max was 13. And well, we're starting right out of the gate on a Friday. Sidebar. I do believe we'll have a new witness. We'll see what's going on this morning. Those of you that were with me after court yesterday, after she dismissed the jury, they did have a little hearing there and oral arguments in regards to Hank Brennan put forward that if Arcca was going to do new testing and was going to do stuff, like he had already said, like he already contested how much time they were given and everything. And Arcca was given more time to do their discovery and submit everything over to the Commonwealth. Well, since then, the Commonwealth's expert has also amended one of his statements based on what Arcca turned in. And Hank Brennan says that based on the new information from Arcca, he should be allowed to rebut this and be given more time to actually submit new statements and all, and ask for a continuance in that. And boy, did the defense have an issue with that, because, what's good for thee is not good for me, just like rules for thee, but not for me, the whole thing. What hypocrites. They have violated everything in Rule 14 and anything else you can think of, sanctionable things in regards to the Arcca testimony and witnesses. And yet they have the nerve to say, well, yeah, it's new information, but like, too bad. Like, they shouldn't be able to do anything about it. That's just not fair to give them another shot at discrediting us. When it's a battle of the experts, things get dicey. And in this case, when it comes to the accident reconstruction, which is the Arcca witness and the Aperture witnesses, and that's what the hearing was about, Aperture for the Commonwealth and Arcca for the defense, just to keep it straight for those that are following. It's a battle of the experts, and they're trying both sides to get the advantage, time-wise, surprise-wise. If you're going to put an expert against my expert, I don't want your expert to know what my expert is doing. Yes, in Australia, I realized that. And in some ways, I can appreciate that, because I do like the way Australia also deals with crime in general in the media. Like they don't allow with a lot of the crimes to list the criminal and or the victim. They protect both their rights until everything's kind of settled or put down. And I do appreciate like that. It is very hard for me to get information on cases in Australia, although there are a few that I have checked into. And I have asked for help from some of my friends in Australia to get, information on them. In here in America, doctor, not always do we have access. Like we do not have any cameras in New York in criminal cases. Federal cases in general do not have cameras, and some states allow and some states don't. Some are full transparency and some are it's up to the judge in the case. Yes, tomorrow, kiddo. Yep, except for the mushroom case. That's the one that's in my server. People are posting information on that from the media in Australia, and I appreciate it. I've been following that one behind the scenes. I haven't brought that to the public, but the mushroom case, the woman with the alleged poisoning of her ex-husband's family and the murder, they died. Really, really rough case there. Yeah. No mushroom sauce for sure. It's a long sidebar. Anybody want to guess what this one's about? Okay, jury's coming in. So it's going to be a couple more minutes before we start. We'll get to our first witness of the day. Then I'll stop talking. Well, I hope you've been able to get in touch with everybody there, Doctor. Have you been in, like Chris? And I saw Jay a couple weeks ago. Like we actually did something together. He's been doing well. Yeah. I spoke with our friend Jade. She's been doing well too. The only one I haven't actually been able to connect with lately, besides yourself, which I'm so glad you're here, was Polly. And I'm hoping that she's doing well also. Because gosh, would it be great to like do something together again, all of y'all. Great minds. So we're back with our friend the fan. It would, wouldn't it? Yes. I think we still all have a group chat on X. I think everybody is still in there. We should all try really hard to work something out. Hey, Couch. Thanks for joining us over on Twitch. We got all of us fans of the fan. What a nice full picture today. What do you think, Couch? Like they're really focusing on the fan front and center in its glory today at optimal speed almost. Looks like it got a good cleaning. Oh, we've already had the first sidebar. She didn't even sit down before she said, I want to see the attorneys. Like she didn't even drop her, she comes in with all her files and everything in her coffee cup. She didn't even get them onto her desk before she asked to see the attorneys. We heard a little movement and then boom. I didn't even get a chance to say, what do you guys think? Is she going to cover a sidebar? Call for a sidebar? I didn't even get the words out. So we have number one. We have a moment. For those of you that are interested in that federal case in New York against Sean Combs, P. Diddy, I'll be doing another review tonight of today's court testimonies in events in yesterday's, just to bring the week to a close. And then I think I'm going to go weekly after that, because YouTube has actually formally notified me that the content is too shocking for them to allow in the algorithm or to push in any way. So it will stay limited and behind the scenes. So unless you're looking for it on my channel, you're not going to find it. There's a lot of coverage by the bigger channels. I don't know if they're doing that to them, but I did try to appeal it, but they said no, the content is just too much. Like, it's just no, it's not appropriate, for the algorithm, to push with the advertisers or the algorithm, which was something when I was smaller. I didn't really have to worry about, all of this with the advertisers and stuff like that. So I think the only thing I'll be able to do is maybe make a small short for advertising and link the playlist so that people can find it easier. That's about it, because I think maybe the short will end up in the algorithm and they'll actually be able to find it, easier. Oh, it looks like we got our first bot there too, the couch. Look at it. The Twitch bots are making, like, yesterday there was hardly any until we ended the stream, and then one showed up, but I caught it before I cut out because I have the chat open on the side. Because yesterday's audio was really bad, but just for those of you that were here, I decided not to edit it out because we'll lose the chat, and there was some good conversation in there about the evidence, and there was some, links and all put in. So I decided not to edit it out, because you couldn't hear me because it was all scrambled. I just ended the stream so you can hear the outro. But basically all I was really going to be saying is that it was quite hypocritical during that hearing for Bob Alessi to actually protest so much about discovery violations, and he actually jumped up and said it's a Rule 14 violation. I'm like, how dare you, sir? I can't believe the irony of you saying that after everything that's going on with you guys in Arcca, like purposely misleading the court, violations of candor of court, lying to the judge in February in regards to them being neutral witnesses for a third party. Like, oh, what else this? Oh, look, there. Oh, couch, you're getting a second fan. This is the jury fan. I believe the jury's coming in. No problem if you can't see it on mobile, couch. I will get it, or Shill.
All persons have any business before the Honorable Beverly Cannone, Justice of the Norfolk Superior Court, and for the County of Norfolk. Draw near, give your attendance, and you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This court is now open. You may be seated.
Good morning again, counsel. Good morning again, Ms. Reed. Good morning, jurors. So I appreciate your patience. I have to ask you those 3 questions. Were you all able to follow my instructions and refrain from discussing this case with anyone since we left yesterday?
Yes.
Everyone said yes and nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow my instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case? Yes. Everyone said yes and nodded affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case since we left yesterday? I have one other important instruction for you folks, and it's so important that each and every juror can hear the evidence or the testimony that's presented, can follow the testimony, and can understand and evaluate the testimony of each witness and the exhibits. In order to do that, I just want to be very clear that it's important that people do not comment on the evidence or make any comments. Once you enter the room, it's probably a good idea to just listen. Don't talk. Don't make any facial expressions. No muttering under your breath. No audible noises, because people need to hear what's going on and to understand everything. So out of respect for your fellow jurors, I would ask that you be very careful to make sure you don't do that. and out of respect to the lawyers who worked so hard to get this case before. Okay, thank you very much. With that, Mr. Brennan, your first witness, please.
Or if I could begin by offering a stipulation that's agreed to between the parties.
Okay, can we turn the AC down, please? Thank you. Yes.
Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to read a stipulation agreement between the Commonwealth and the defense.
Okay.
And the stipulation between the parties is as follows. Now comes the Commonwealth and Karen Reed, the defendant in the above captioned matter. Both parties respectfully stipulate to the following. The 2 Massachusetts State Police troopers present at the autopsy conducted by the medical examiner, Dr. Scortibello, on January 31st, 2022, were Trooper Keefe and Trooper Watson. Former Trooper Michael Proctor was not present.
Thank you.
And
Yes, thank you.
with that, Your Honor, I'd like to introduce and play clip number 21.
Okay. Oh, turn the AC off. Hold on one second, please. I just want that. Can the jurors hear better with that on?
So John's laying there, his left and his right, and I approach John from the left. That's where the street is. And he had a piece of glass, like perched on his nose, like just wedged like a splinter would be. And I just pulled it, and as soon as I pulled it, it just gushed blood down his face.
So we need this marked.
Yes. We have the item.
Exhibit 169.
Mr. Lally, your next one.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth calls Andre Porto to the stand.
You solemnly swear the honesty of the court and jury in the case now hearing to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Morning. Hey, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your last name for the court?
Yeah, my name is Andre Porto, last name spelled Porto.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I'm a forensic scientist too in the DNA unit at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab.
And where did you go to school?
I received my undergraduate Bachelor of Science in Microbiology from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And then I received a Master of Science in Biomedical Forensic Sciences at the Boston University School of Medicine.
Now, following your education, where did you go to work?
I started at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab in the DNA unit.
And how long have you worked at the state lab?
Slow down.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
How long have you worked at the state lab, sir?
Since September 2019.
Now, when you joined the lab, what was your position and title that you were initially hired for?
I was hired as a Forensic Scientist 1.
Now, can you please explain to the jury your duties and responsibilities as a Forensic Scientist 1?
Sure. So a Forensic Scientist 1 is a training position where we're hired and we undergo an extensive training program where we do undergo the analysis process in training casework samples, where we learn how to do the lab work and analyze profiles. And at the end of this training, I took a competency test to make sure that I was able to accurately conduct the DNA analysis process. And once I passed that, I was then put on to do casework. And a year after completing both my competency tests and a year after my hire date, I was then promoted to a Forensic Scientist 2.
And so you're currently a Forensic Scientist 2, is that correct?
Correct.
And what is the difference between a Forensic Scientist 1 and a Forensic Scientist 2?
So a Forensic Scientist 2 is just the automatic promotion that you get after a year of hire. and passing the initial competency test. And we're able to do the DNA process in casework samples.
Now, so what type of analysis do you currently do at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory?
I can do the DNA analysis process in casework and no samples. That includes the lab work as well as analyzing the DNA profiles that are generated from the work.
Now, first, just in general terms, but specifically with reference to DNA analysis, can you explain to the jury how is that analysis performed?
Sure. So there's 4 steps in the analysis process. The first step is extraction, where we apply heat and chemicals to the samples to break open the cells and release that DNA to be available for use. Step 2 is called quantitation, where we take a small sample of that extracted DNA to estimate, and we use chemicals and run it through an instrument to estimate how much DNA we extracted. And then we proceed to step 3, which is called amplification. And that's basically, think of it as a molecular photocopier, where we target specific areas of the DNA to make millions of copies of it. And then we run it through, go to detection, where we run it through an instrument, and we generate the DNA profile as an electronic file on a computer.
Now, is the state lab where you work accredited?
Yes, it is.
And by whom?
We are accredited by an organization called ANAB, which stands for ANSI, National Accreditation Board, and ANSI stands for American National Standards Institute.
I need you to slow down, please.
Sorry.
Please.
Sorry.
Now, Mr. Porto, are there steps taken in your lab during that process that you were just explaining to prevent against contamination?
Yes, there are.
And can you explain what those are?
Sure. So there are various steps. One step to prevent contamination between analysts would be to bleach and wipe down the workstations before use and after. Another way to prevent DNA transfer from analysts to the samples is to wear personal protective equipment, such as lab coats, gloves, masks, hairnets, and beard guards. And a way to prevent transfer from sample to sample would be to frequently change gloves, as well as only have one sample open at a time.
Now, with your work at the lab, is there a review process that your work undergoes?
Yes, there is.
And can you describe that process to the jury?
Sure. So once I complete my work, the file undergoes 2 types of reviews. The first is a technical review, where another qualified analyst will take the file and they'll do their own independent assessment and make sure that they come up with the conclusions and that they agree with the conclusions that I reached. And they'll also make sure that all the protocols were followed and every decision is scientifically sound. Once that review is completed, it undergoes an administrative review, where another qualified analyst will then look through the file and they look for clerical errors, such as typos or missing page numbers or missing case numbers. Once those 2 reviews are completed, the results can then be reported out.
Now, as a part of that accreditation process that you were speaking about a few moments ago, do you undergo anything called proficiency testing?
Yes, I do.
And can you explain to the jury what that proficiency testing process consists of?
Yeah, so a proficiency test is a test that's administered twice a year by an external vendor. And the results of this test are not known to the analyst at the time. And we basically treat it like it's a real case, where it undergoes the analysis process as if it were a real case. And this test is used to show that the analyst is demonstrates ongoing competency in the DNA analysis process. And successful completion of the test is required to maintain qualification as an analyst.
And what areas do you specifically undergo proficiency testing in?
DNA analysis.
And have you successfully completed each of those proficiency tests that you've taken?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Porto, could you explain to the jury what exactly is DNA?
Yeah, so DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and it's basically the building block that makes us who we are. We each have 2 copies of our DNA, one that we inherit from mom and one that we inherit from dad. And that this combination makes sure that, barring with the exception of identical twins, we all have different DNA.
And is DNA the same in every cell of a person's body?
Yes. So what that means is, if I were to take a blood sample and a saliva sample from the same person, the same DNA profile will be generated.
Now, you spoke a bit earlier about the different steps included in the DNA testing. If you could, just a little bit slower, go through each of those 4 steps again for the jury.
Sure. So like I said, it's a 4-step process. So extraction, quantitation, amplification, and detection. So extraction, we use chemicals and heat to burst open the cells to make that DNA available for use. Quantitation, step 2, we take a small sample of that extracted DNA. We use a different set of chemicals and an instrument to estimate how much DNA is available for use. Amplification is the 3rd step, which I mentioned is the basically molecular photocopier, where it makes millions of copies of specific areas of the DNA. And then the 4th and last step is detection, where we run those amplified copies through an instrument, and we generate the DNA profile as an electronic file on the computer.
Now, Mr. Porto, what is STR?
So STR stands for short tandem repeats, and they're the locations that we're making the millions of copies of.
Now, in your work at the lab, do you have something that's referred to as a known item?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what a known item is?
Sure. So a known item is an item that's taken directly from a person to be used as a reference sample, so we know what the source of that profile is.
And conversely, what is a questioned item?
A questioned item is an item that's taken, let's say, from a crime scene where we don't know what the source is.
Now, do you also have terminology within your lab as far as a parent versus a child item?
Yes, we do.
And can you explain how those labels are and how they reference to what you do in your work?
Sure. So a parent item is, for example, the original item, and the child is a sample of that item. So for example, this box of tissues would be the parent item, and if you were to swab the outside, the swab would be the child item. So the box of tissues would receive, let's say, an item of 1-1. The swabbing of the outside would receive an item of 1-1.1.
Now, what are positive and negative controls?
Yeah, so a positive control is a control that has it's a known sample with a known DNA profile that we use in every step of the DNA analysis process to make sure that each step and instrument worked as expected and properly. And then a negative control is a sample that has no DNA in it. It only receives the chemicals that we use. And that's to ensure that the chemicals that we're using don't have any DNA inherent to them.
Now, when you as an analyst or a forensic scientist too are assigned work within the DNA unit, where do you retrieve that evidence from?
Yeah, so I retrieve it from a locked cold room that's only accessible via keycard.
Now, why are items kept in cold storage?
Yeah, the cold storage helps preserve the DNA for long-term storage.
And as far as the heat versus the cold, why is it that it's specifically kept, or why does the coldness of the storage room help preserve the item?
The cold can help prevent, let's say, growth of bacteria and mold that can degrade DNA.
And what does heat do conversely in reference to an item of forensic value?
Heat can help degrade DNA, and also promotes bacterial and mold growth that can further degrade that DNA.
Now, when you receive an item from the cold storage, how is that item typically packaged when you retrieve it from there?
Sure. So the item comes in these plastic, clear, transparent plastic sealed containers that has a label with a case number on it. And inside of that, each sample is within like a small plastic tube that has a label with that case number and item number.
Now, at some point, were you assigned to perform some work on a lab case number 22-02184 pertaining to this defendant, Karen Reed?
Yes, I did.
And what type of work in general terms were you assigned to do in this case?
I was assigned to do the DNA analysis process.
And that was on several items, is that correct?
Correct.
And could you explain to the jury the sort of the process that you used to analyze evidence in this case?
Sure. So the case underwent the 4 steps that I explained before. So extraction, quantitation, amplification, and detection.
And there was a known standard that was done in this case, specifically in item number 8-1.1.1. Is that correct?
Correct.
And did another analyst test and report the results from the known blood standard from that item 8-1.1.1?
Correct.
And how is that done?
Yeah, so that undergoes the same process that I explained. It'll go through the 4 steps: extraction, quantitation, amplification, detection. And then the analyst that did the interpretation and reported that out, the known standard out, they went through the profile to make sure that it's from one person or single source. And once that went through the review process that I explained, so technical and administrative review, and once that was all completed, the standard was available to be used for comparisons.
And to whom was that known standard identified as belonging to?
John O'Keefe.
Now, you use the word in there as far as a single source. Can you explain to the jury what your understanding of that term is based on your training and experience?
Sure. So a single source is just a DNA profile that has one contributor to it. So only one person contributed DNA to that profile.
What exactly is a DNA profile?
Yeah, so a DNA profile is basically the combination of all of the locations that we amplified during the third step of the process. And it's basically, you can think of it as like a chart, like an EKG, where it has peaks and valleys, and each peak has a specific number. And the DNA profile is just a combination of all those numbers put together.
Now, can you explain to the jury in general terms, to start with, the process of comparison between a known standard and a questioned or unknown standard?
Sure. So first, I did the analysis on the question items. I did the 4 steps. I analyzed the profiles that were generated. I then interpreted, make sure that I could determine the number of contributors. And once that was completed, I then used the standard that was available and compared them to all the profiles that were suitable for comparison.
Now, sir, starting with item 3-1.1, what was that a sample from?
That was a sample from taillight passenger.
And from a specific vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
And what, if any, information were you given as to that vehicle that the swab from the taillight was from?
Do you mean like the license plate?
Yes.
Could I refer to my notes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, this is a little detail as far as the testimony goes.
I don't have a problem. Does the defense object?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So the license plate was 3G6684. Right, I'm sorry, 3GC684.
Now, with reference to the swab from the taillight, were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. And the DNA profile from this item is at least, so sorry. I'll just restart. So the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. And the DNA profile from this item is at least 510 non-alien times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, what does that mean?
So an inclusion is basically when I look at the question DNA profile that was generated, and I compare it to the known DNA profile. And if the characteristics of the known profile are consistent with the characteristics observed in the question DNA profile, that's an inclusion.
Now, as far as that number, 510 non-alien, how many zeros in that number?
So a non-alien is a 1 followed by 30 zeros.
Now, that profile, in addition to Mr. O'Keefe's profile, also had 2 unknown contributors, correct?
Correct.
Now, was that item also submitted to an outside vendor named Bodhi Technologies for further analysis?
Correct.
And with reference to your comparative analysis from the profile from this item to Mr. O'Keefe profile, if you could again just expound upon what does inclusion mean?
Yeah, so an inclusion, I compared the known standard that I had available for use from John O'Keefe to the DNA profile generated from the taillight. And the DNA profile if that was consistent with the DNA profile that I observed in the questioned item, and that's what an inclusion means.
Now, regarding item 3-6, what is the description of that item?
Yeah, so 3-6 is a root end of hair from exterior passenger side rear panel.
And is that the same vehicle as far as the taillight sample?
Correct.
Now, with respect to hair in general, there's a root end and a shaft end, correct?
Correct.
And what limitations does your lab have with regard to DNA testing of hair?
So when we test hair, we're actually, the root end of the hair, we're looking at any potential skin cells that might be attached to the root end. So that's where the DNA that we're looking for is coming from. And if there's not too many, yeah.
Now, are you familiar with the term based on your training experience known as autosomal DNA?
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury what your understanding of that term is?
Yeah, so autosomal DNA is DNA that's located in the nucleus of the cell, and that's the DNA that we inherit from both mom and dad.
Now, are you also familiar based on your training experience with a term known as mitochondrial DNA?
Yes.
And can you please explain to the jury what your understanding of the term mitochondrial DNA is?
Yeah, so mitochondrial DNA is DNA that's found in the mitochondria of a cell, and we inherit that from the mother.
It may be somewhat evident, but could you please explain to the jury sort of the difference between autosomal DNA on the one hand and mitochondrial DNA on the other?
Yeah, so like I said, the autosomal DNA is the one that we have 2 copies of, where we inherit one from mom and one from dad. And then the mitochondrial DNA is a circular DNA that we just inherit from mom.
Now, is the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab equipped to perform mitochondrial DNA testing?
No, we're not.
Now, was the DNA extract from the hair also sent to that external vendor, Bodie Technologies in Lorton, Virginia?
I'm not sure if the extract was sent, but I know that the shaft of the hair was sent to Bodie.
Now, what testing did you perform on the hair?
I did the regular DNA analysis process on the root end of the hair.
And that was done prior to it being shipped to that external vendor, is that correct?
Correct.
And what conclusions were you able to draw from the testing that you did on the hair?
Yeah, so there was no human DNA detected, and STR analysis was not performed.
Now, what does that mean, sir?
Yeah, so it means that I didn't detect any human DNA. So there might be DNA on there, but it was below what our instrumentation could detect.
Now, turning your attention to item 3-2.1.1, what is the description related to that item, sir?
It's a sample from the exterior of broken drinking glass.
And is there any further indication as far as the broken drinking glass, as far as where it was recovered?
Oh, yeah, 34 Fairview Road.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from this item, the drinking glass?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from this question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
Yeah, so the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 530 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This supports an inclusion.
This is the last time I'll ask you this, but just if you could reiterate to the jury, what does an inclusion mean?
Yep, so an inclusion is when I compared the known standard to the question item, and if the profile in the known standard is consistent with the profile in the question profile, that's an inclusion.
And that number again, as far as 530 non-alien, how many zeros again in that number?
That's a 1 followed by 30 zeros.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to another item, 7-1.2.1, what is the description related to that item?
Sample from stain A on upper right leg of jeans.
And is there any further indication as to whom those genes belong to?
John O'Keefe.
Now, were you also able to generate a DNA profile from this item, the stain A on the upper right leg of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from the question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude with reference to that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. Contributor 1 is suitable for comparison, and due to limited information, contributors 2 and 3 are not suitable for comparison. The DNA profile from this item is at least 570 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Thank you, sir. Now, turning your attention to item 7-1.3.1, what is the description related to that item?
Sample from stain B on upper right leg of jeans.
And same genes as the previous item?
Yes.
Now, were you able to generate a DNA profile from this item, stain B on the upper right leg of the genes of Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from this questioned item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
Yep, so the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 660 non-alien times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, with reference to item 7-1.4.1, and again, these items with the dash and the point, is that what you were referring to earlier as the parent-child relationship between items?
Yes.
And what is the description for 7-1.4.1?
Sample from stain C on upper right leg of jeans.
Now, were you able to generate a DNA profile from this item from stain C on the upper right leg of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis of this question item stain C to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile is a mixture of at least 2 contributors, including male DNA. Contributor 1 is suitable for comparison. Due to limited information, contributor 2 is not suitable for comparison. The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 2 contributors. The DNA profile from this item is at least 830 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, with reference to item 7-1.5.1, what was the description of that?
Sample from stain D on upper right leg of jeans.
Now, were you able to generate a DNA profile from this item from stain D on the upper right leg of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from this item to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 670 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, did you also do some testing on an item 7-1.6.1?
Yes, I did.
And what was the description associated with that item?
Sample from stain E on upper right leg of jeans.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item, stain E, on the upper right leg of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that question item to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 2 contributors, including male DNA. Contributor 1 is suitable for comparison. Due to limited information, contributor 2 is not suitable for comparison. The DNA profile from this item is at least 1.0 decillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides a support for an inclusion.
I used a different number there as far as a decillion. How many zeros is a decillion?
Yeah, a decillion is a 1 followed by 33 zeros.
Now, with each of those items that you just testified about as far as the genes, the question items from the stains on Mr. O'Keefe's jeans, those were each located on the right leg, correct?
Correct.
Now, did you also perform some analysis on item 7-1.7.1?
I did.
And what is the description associated with that item number?
Sample from unstained areas of the exterior of jeans.
Now, were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item from the unstained areas of the exterior of Mr. O'Keefe's jeans?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from this questioned item to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 4 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 53 septillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 3 unknown individuals than if it originated from 4 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
And again, sir, with that number, as far as 53 septillion times more likely, how many zeros in a septillion?
A septillion is a 1 followed by 24 zeros.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to what's listed as number 12 in your report, but item 7-18.4.1. Did you do some testing on that item as well?
Yes.
And what was the description associated with that?
Sample from stain C on top front of Gray's long sleeve shirt.
And the gray long sleeve shirt, is that attributed as belonging to a specific person?
Yes, John O'Keefe.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item, specifically sample from stain C on the top front of the gray long sleeve shirt of Mr. O'Keefe?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that questioned item from the shirt to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the male DNA profile was interpreted as originated from a single contributor. The DNA profile from this item is at least 58 octillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe than if it originated from an unknown, unrelated individual. This provides support for an inclusion.
And again, sir, that number, as far as 58 octillion times more likely, how many zeros in an octillion?
So an octillion is a 1 followed by 27 zeros.
Now, sir, if I could take you down to listed as 15 in your report, but did you do some testing on item 7-18.14.1?
I did.
And what was the description associated with that item?
So sample from stain L on back bottom right of gray long sleeve shirt.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis with reference to that item, the sample from stain L on the back bottom right of the gray long sleeve shirt, in comparison to the DNA profile from the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 2 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 1.0 decillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, sir, did you also perform some analysis on an item numbered 7-18.17.1?
I did.
And what was the description associated with that item, sir?
Sample from unstained areas of exterior of gray long sleeve shirt.
And similarly, were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item, the sample from the unstained areas of the exterior of the gray long sleeve shirt of Mr. O'Keefe?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 2 contributors, including male DNA. Contributor 1 is suitable for comparison. Due to limited information, contributor 2 is not suitable for comparison. The DNA profile from this item is at least 960 nonillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to group a couple, 4 separate items from your report, starting with what's listed in your report as number 9 is item 7-3.1, correct?
Correct.
And what is the description associated with that item, sir?
Sample from stain D on right instep of sneaker.
And 11 from your report, you also did some analysis on item 7-18.3.1, is that correct?
Correct.
And what was the description associated with that?
Sample from stain B on top front of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.7.1, do you see that as well?
Yes.
And what was the description associated with that item?
Sample from stain F on top front of gray long sleeve shirt.
And lastly, in this group, item 7-18.8.1, what was the description associated with that?
Sample from stain G on back left sleeve of gray long sleeve shirt.
And with respect to each of those last 4 samples from those items, were you able to generate a DNA profile with respect to each of those 4?
Profiles were generated from them.
And what did you conclude based on the generation of those profiles with those 4 items?
Yeah, so the profiles that were generated were not suitable for comparison.
And if you could explain briefly to the jury, when you say not suitable for comparison, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so for 7-3.1, it was a mixture of at least 5 contributors. And at the DNA unit, we validated, basically we tested and make sure that our protocols were we can only interpret mixtures of up to 4 contributors. So I determined that there were 5 contributors, so that makes it too complex for us to do comparisons to it. So it's not suitable for comparison for that reason. And the other 3 items, due to the quality of the profile, they were not suitable for comparison. And basically what that means is that there were such low amounts of DNA that was in the sample that there was a lack of information from the profiles themselves, so they weren't really suitable for comparisons.
And just to be clear, the item that you're referring to with the 5 possible contributors, that's a shoot, correct?
Correct.
Now, if I could turn your attention in your report to what you have listed as number 10, there are a number of different items listed there, correct?
Correct.
And starting with item 7-17.2.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain A on top front left of orange t-shirt.
And 7-17.3, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain B on top of front left of orange t-shirt.
And item 7-17.4.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain C on top front left of orange t-shirt.
And item 7-17.5.1, what is the description associated with that item number?
Sample from stain D on front bottom right of orange t-shirt.
And item 7-17.6.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain E on back left shoulder of orange t-shirt.
And so each of those respectively were samples taken from stains on the orange t-shirt of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Correct.
Now turning your attention to item 7-18.2.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain A on right sleeve of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.5.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain D on center front of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.6.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain E on center front of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.9.1, did you generate a profile from that item as well?
Yes.
And what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain H1 on back left of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.10.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain H2 on back left of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.11.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain I on back right shoulder of gray long sleeve shirt.
And item 7-18.12.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain J on back bottom right of gray long sleeve shirt.
And lastly, with this group search, item 7-18.13.1, what is the description associated with that?
Sample from stain K on back bottom right of gray long sleeve shirt.
And so each of those items beginning with 7-18 were associated with various stains taken from various areas on the gray long sleeve shirt of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Correct.
And with respect to each of those areas of the orange t-shirt and the gray long sleeve shirt, were you able to generate a DNA profile from those items?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis of each of the DNA profiles from those items to the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the male DNA profile was interpreted as originating from a single contributor. The DNA profile from these items is at least 490 octillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe than if it originated from an unknown, unrelated individual. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, again, if you could just remind the jury, when you say single source contributor, what does that mean?
Yeah, so a single source profile is a profile that has one contributor to it. So like one person contributed DNA to that profile.
And with respect to the number as far as 490 octillion times more likely, how many zeros are in that number?
So an octillion is a 1 followed by 27 zeros.
Now, lastly, sir, did you perform any analysis with reference to items numbered 8-2 and 8-3?
I did.
And what were the descriptions respectively for items 8-2 and 8-3?
So item 8-2 was right hand fingernail clippings from John O'Keefe, and item 8-3 were left hand fingernail clippings from John O'Keefe.
So fingernail clippings from both the right and left hand of Mr. O'Keefe.
Correct.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from those item numbers, the right and left hand fingernail clippings of Mr. O'Keefe?
I was.
And based on, from your comparative analysis of the DNA profile from the right and left hand fingernail clippings, both of Mr. O'Keefe, taken in conjunction with the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
Yeah, so the male DNA profile was interpreted as originated from a single contributor, and the DNA profile from these items is at least 490 octillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe than if it originated from an unknown, unrelated individual. This provides support for an inclusion.
So with respect to each the right and left hand fingernail clippings of Mr. O'Keefe, both of those were identified by you or your analysis as a single source contributor, correct?
Correct.
And they were each 490 octillion times more likely to have originated from John O'Keefe than from an unknown, unrelated individual. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I have nothing further on.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Mr. Porto, I would like to start by asking you about item 3-1.1, which you've identified as a sample from the passenger side taillight of the vehicle. Can you orient yourself in your report to that item?
Yes,
And that, of course, was the passenger side taillight that was attached to the vehicle, correct?
correct.
You were never asked to do any DNA comparison on any pieces of taillight connected with this case, correct?
Let me check my other report. For taillight, there was another item that was item 3-3.1, which is sample from apparent glass on rear bumper, if that's what you're referencing.
Okay, so if I suggested to you that the taillight was plastic, that glass wouldn't have been the taillight, correct?
I don't have, that's beyond my scope of testing.
Gotcha. Okay. With regard to the passenger side taillight, you found that there were 3 contributors of DNA to that taillight attached to the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
One of those contributors appeared to be John O'Keefe. Is that fair to say?
He was included
All
into
right.
the profile.
With regard to the other 2 contributors, who were they?
They could be anybody.
Were you ever asked to compare DNA samples from either Canton Police Detective Kevin Albert or Canton Police Chief Kenneth Berkowitz to the DNA profile that you analyzed from that passenger side taillight?
I was not.
Now, with regard to the broken drinking glass, which is item 3-2.1.1, do you see that in your report?
I do.
With regard to that, you came up with a DNA profile that also had 3 contributors, correct?
Correct.
One of those contributors appeared to be John O'Keefe, correct?
He was included, correct.
Who were the other 2 contributors?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
Were you ever asked with regard to that broken drinking glass to compare the DNA profile that you analyzed with the DNA of either Boston Police Sergeant Brian Albert or ATF agent Brian Higgins?
I was not.
Now, with regard to 7.1.2.1, or maybe it's 7-1.2.1, that's the stain A from the upper right leg of the jeans.
Correct.
All right. And you were aware, you were told that those were the jeans that John O'Keefe was wearing on the morning in question when he was found?
Based on the sample description, that's what it seems.
All right. And it turned out that his DNA was on his own jeans, correct?
He was included in the profile
All
from
right.
that
And
item.
that was unsurprising to you, correct? And with regard to that item, you found that there were 3 contributors of DNA, correct?
Correct.
With John O'Keefe being one of them.
He was included in the profile, yes.
And who were the other 2?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
Let's move on to stain B, also from the upper right leg of the jeans. That is 7-1.3.1. You see that in your report.
I do.
When you found a DNA profile, how many contributors of DNA were there?
3 contributors.
All right. And again, this was John O'Keefe's jeans, correct?
Based on the description, yes.
So he was one of the 3 contributors.
He was included in the profile, yeah.
Who were the other 2?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
Moving on to stain C from the upper right leg of the jeans. 7-1.4.1. You see that in your report?
I do.
with regard to the DNA profile that you analyzed there, how many contributors of DNA were there to that profile?
At least 2, and it was interpreted as 2 contributors.
And again, this is the same pair of genes that he was found in, correct?
Based on the description, yes.
And you said at least 2 contributors. It actually could have been more than 2.
Based on our protocols, I had to call it 2, and we determined it as 2, but it could be more than 2, yes.
Okay. Well, let's pay attention to the one that was not John O'Keefe, at least that one. Who contributed that DNA to his pants?
I don't know. It could be anybody.
Moving on to stain D, which is 7-1.5.1. And if I can just put my glasses on to make sure I've read my own writing correctly. Actually, is it 7-15-1? Did I get that wrong the first time?
D?
I'm sorry?
Do you mean
Stain D? Stain D.
Stain D is 7-1.5.1.
Oh, I had it right the first time. Okay. With regard to that stain, you also got a DNA profile. And how many contributors were there to that DNA profile?
I interpret it as 3 contributors.
And again, this John O'Keefe's genes, correct?
Correct.
He was one of the contributors to his own genes, correct?
He was included in the profile.
And
correct.
with regard to that stain on the upper right leg of his genes, who contributed the DNA to who were the other 2 contributors of DNA to that stain?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
And then finally, with regard to that upper right leg of the genes, there was also a stain E, correct?
Correct.
How many contributors did you find to that DNA profile?
2 contributors.
One of which was John O'Keefe to his own genes, correct?
He was included, yes.
And who was the other contributor to that stain on the genes?
It could be anybody. I don't know.
And by the way, just for the record, that was 7.1.6.1?
7-1.6.
7-1.6.1. Thank you, sir. Okay, now, with regard to the unstained area of the exterior of the genes, do you see item 7-1.7.1?
Yes.
You found a DNA profile with regard to that unstained area as well, correct?
Correct.
How many contributors of DNA were there to that unstained area of the genes?
I interpreted it as 4 contributors.
And John O'Keefe was one of those, correct?
He was included in the profile.
His own genes.
Based on the description, yes.
Who were the other 3 contributors to that DNA profile?
I don't know. It could be anybody.
And before we move on to the sneaker, I just wanted to ask you a question about the passenger side taillight that I neglected to ask you. That was the one where there were 3 contributors, correct? And again, I'm going back to 3-1.1.
Correct.
Sorry to skip around, sir.
Okay.
I'm not trying to make this
all
any
right.
more confusing than it is. With regard to the passenger side taillight and that DNA profile, are you able to determine when that DNA was deposited on the passenger side taillight that was attached to the vehicle?
No, I'm not.
Are you able to testify with any certainty that it was deposited there, say, on January 28th or 29th of 2022?
No, I can't.
So consistent with your analysis of it, are you able to say whether it occurred prior to January 28th of 2022?
No, I can't.
Were you aware that that vehicle was John O'Keefe's girlfriend's vehicle?
I was not.
Were you provided any information about just how often he had been in and around that vehicle prior to January 28th of 2022? So moving on to 7-3.1, which was the right instep of the sneaker, correct? You see that in your report?
Yep.
With regard to that particular stain, you noted how many contributors of DNA?
Yeah, it was interpreted as at least 5 contributors.
And when you have interpreted it as at least 5 contributors, what does that do to your ability to find out who contributed that DNA?
So based on our protocols, we're not able to do any comparisons to any mixtures that are 5 or more contributors. So it's not suitable for comparisons.
Okay, which means that with regard to the sneaker, at least, you couldn't even say whether John O'Keefe's DNA was on it, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to all 5, do you have any idea who contributed the DNA to that sneaker?
No, I don't.
Now, moving on to, I just have a couple more for you, sir. Moving on to what is labeled as stain L, which is 7-18.14.1, I believe. Do you see that in your report?
I do.
And that was a stain on the back bottom of his long sleeve shirt, correct?
Correct.
And were you told that the long sleeve shirt was his outer clothing when he was found?
I don't believe so.
How many contributors to that stain on the back bottom of his long sleeve shirt did you find in that DNA profile?
I interpret it as 2 contributors.
And did you make any match with regard to either of those contributors or both?
I did comparisons, and John O'Keefe was included as one of the contributors.
Okay, so John O'Keefe was a contributor of DNA to his own long sleeve shirt, correct?
Based on the descriptions, correct.
All right, and whose other DNA was on that shirt?
I don't know.
And then finally, with regard to 7-18.17.1, that was an unstained area of the exterior of that shirt, correct? That same long sleeve shirt.
Correct.
And you tested that and got a DNA profile, correct?
Correct.
How many contributors were there to that DNA profile?
I interpret it as 2 contributors.
Was John O'Keefe one of them?
He was included as one of the contributors.
Okay, so his DNA was found on his own shirt, correct?
Based on the description, correct.
And who contributed the other DNA profile to John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
I don't know.
With regard to any of the stains on the upper right leg of the jeans, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that you've discussed here today. Were you ever asked to compare the DNA profile with the DNA profiles of either Brian Higgins or Brian Albert?
I was not.
Oh,
And your answer was you were not?
I was not.
Did anybody ever provide you with DNA profiles of Brian Higgins or Brian Albert?
sustained to that.
I may have one moment, Judge.
Yes.
I think it's going to be more important the knowns rather than the unknowns. I do hope on redirect.
I just have one
clarify
more
where
question for you,
the
Mr. Porto,
is.
and I do want to thank you for answering all my questions here today. You wrote reports on your analysis of all the items and the work that you did on this case,
I did.
and you are directed pursuant to protocol to address those reports to somebody, correct?
Correct.
Who was it that you sent the reports to in this case?
I'm sustaining the objection.
Did you send those reports to Michael Proctor?
Sustain. Jurors, strike the question.
I have nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Wow.
Mr. Porto, based on your training and experience and years of doing DNA testing at the lab, when it comes to samples from items of clothing, is it uncommon or common to have multiple contributors?
That depends. It can happen, but it's possible, yes.
Is it something that's a complete anomaly?
I wouldn't say so, no.
Now, turning your attention back to item 3-1.1, that's the sample from the passenger side tail light of the defendant's vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. O'Keefe was found to, his known DNA profile was found to be an inclusion for the DNA profile from the swab from the defendant's passenger side tail light, correct?
He was included in the profile, yes.
And to what statistical, what is the number associated with that inclusion?
The DNA profile from this item is 510 non-alien times more likely to have it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown unrelated individuals.
Now, Mr. Porto, if I could turn you back to number 10 in your report, there's a number of different items listed there, correct?
Correct.
And as far as the items listed associated with various stains on various areas of Mr. O'Keefe's orange t-shirt and gray long sleeve shirt, there's about 13 different DNA profiles that you generated in reference to those items, correct?
Correct.
And from those 13 different items, they're all from a single contributor, is that correct?
Correct. They were interpreted as originated from a single contributor.
And as far as the DNA profile, your comparison of each of those 13 different stains on the orange t-shirt and the gray long sleeve shirt, what were your conclusions again as your comparison with the known standard of John O'Keefe?
Yeah, so the profile was interpreted as originated from a single contributor, and the DNA profile from these items is at least 490 octillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe than if it originated from an unknown, unrelated individual. This provides support for an inclusion.
And lastly, with reference to the fingernail clippings from both the right hand and the left hand of Mr. O'Keefe, those were also your analysis provided for inclusion of Mr. O'Keefe's known DNA standard, correct?
He was included in the profile, correct.
And again, the profile from both the right hand and the left hand fingernail clippings was a single source contributor, correct?
Sustained.
How many sources were associated with those?
Objection.
Sustained.
Nothing further.
Okay, you all set, Mr. Yannetti?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
You are all set, Mr. Porto.
Thank you.
Very much. Who is the next witness?
Your Honor, the Commonwealth will call Ashley Vallier to stand.
Okay. Jim.
You solemnly swear the evidence you give the court and jury in the case down here is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Vallier.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your last name for the court?
My name is Ash Vallier, spelled Vallier.
And where do you work?
I work at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
And where did you go to school?
I got my bachelor degree in biochemistry and cell biology from UC San Diego and a master's degree in biomedical forensic sciences from Boston University.
Now, following your education, where did you go to work from there?
Directly after I got my degree at Boston University, I worked at the Broad Institute.
And what did you do at the Broad Institute?
I did quality control checks of items that potentially could be tested for pharmaceutical use.
Now, how long have you worked at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory?
A little over 6 years.
Now, is the state lab accredited?
It is.
And by whom?
ANAB.
And what does ANAB stand for?
It stands for ANSI National Accreditation Board.
And the ANSI within the ANAB, what does that stand for?
That is another acronym that I don't recall right now.
Now, as part of that accreditation process, do you undergo any sort of type of proficiency testing?
I do.
And can you explain to the jury what that proficiency testing process consists of?
A proficiency test is a test that is given from an outside agency in the discipline that you do casework in. that you would work through like a normal case, but it has an end expected result at the end.
And how often do you undergo proficiency testing?
Every year.
And what areas do you specifically undergo proficiency testing in?
I've done proficiency tests in gunshot primer residue and physical match analysis.
And have you successfully completed each of those proficiency tests that you've taken?
I have.
Now, when you initially joined the State Police Lab, what was your position and title that you were hired for?
I was hired as a forensic scientist 1.
Now, can you please explain to the jury what your duties and responsibilities were as a forensic scientist 1?
So a forensic scientist 1 is the introductory level. It's when you start your training in whatever discipline you're going to be trained in and quality control checks. After you've been at the laboratory for over a year and you're signed off to do casework, you become a forensic scientist 2.
And you're currently a forensic scientist 2, is that correct?
Yes.
What is the difference between a forensic scientist 1 and a forensic scientist 2 at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory?
A forensic scientist 2 has been at the lab for over a year and can do casework.
Now, just in general terms, what does the trace unit do or examine within the State Police Crime Laboratory?
I'm a part of the trace, arson, and explosives unit. So we analyze a wide range of pieces of evidence. So there's trace covers a lot of small things. So paint, fibers, glass, gunshot primer residue, physical matches. Arson covers fire debris evidence, and explosives covers explosives.
Now, specifically with reference to physical match analysis, can you explain to the jury, just in general terms at first, how was that analysis performed?
So physical match analysis is piecing broken things together to see if they were at once a single item. Generally, you look at the questioned item first, the item that you don't know specifically where it came from. Look at that, and then you would look at the known item, which is an item with a known source, like specifically like this window or like this vehicle. They're analyzed at separate times. And then if it looks like there could potentially be a physical match, you would analyze them together and see if they have a mechanical fit.
Now, when you retrieve items just in general to do some sort of physical match analysis, where do you get those items from?
We have evidence storage locations at the laboratory.
And how are they typically packaged when you receive them?
They can be packaged in cardboard boxes, brown paper bags, heat sealed plastic bags. It depends on the individual items.
And when you're doing this analysis, as far as the physical match analysis, what do you do to your bench between your examination of separately packaged items?
I mean, before I do any analysis, I bleach my bench, clean my tools, and then put down a fresh sheet of butcher paper.
And why do you do that?
To make sure everything's clean.
Now, again, speaking more in general terms, on what types of evidence can you perform a physical match analysis?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. In general terms, with your work within the lab, on what types of items can you perform a physical match analysis?
A lot. Anything that has a broken or irregular edge.
Would that include glass?
Yes.
Would that include plastic?
Yes.
What are some of the other things that would also include?
Any sort of like polymer, metals.
And when you're doing a physical match analysis, what instruments do you utilize in the course of that analysis?
Generally, I'll use a stereo zoom microscope. Depending on the size of the items compared, I can use other microscopes as well.
Now, what is a stereo zoom microscope?
Stereo zoom microscope is a microscope that's mounted on a stand. So it gives a wider range of view that you can look at larger items.
And how are you using that specifically in your physical match analysis of, let's say, items of plastic?
I'll use it to look at the edges. And and see if there's any like defining characteristics along those broken edges.
Now, as you're going through your analysis, do you document your work as you go?
I do,
And how do you do that?
with handwritten notes and with photos.
Now, at some point, were you assigned to perform some work on lab case number 22-02184 pertaining to this defendant, Karen Reed?
Yes.
And what type of work were you assigned to do in this case?
I was asked to do physical match analysis, and then later on I was asked to look at, do some trace recovery, look at some debris.
Starting with the physical match analysis, how many different items approximately were you asked to look at?
Over 10.
Several, fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And how were each of those items packaged when you received them?
So the questioned items were packaged first in a large paper bag, and then each item was individually packaged in a smaller brown paper bag within that container.
Now, again, just in general terms, because you've used it a couple times. When you say questioned item versus known item, as it pertains to this analysis in this case, what were the questioned items generally, and what was the known item?
The question items were items labeled as coming from a road, and the known item was labeled as coming from a taillight from a vehicle.
Now, in this case, did you perform your physical match analysis in the same manner that you've previously described based on your education, training, and experience within the lab?
Yes.
Now, initially, you had examined some various plastic and glass items, and there was a drinking straw in there as well, correct?
Yes.
And specifically, as far as the item numbers that you looked at in this physical match analysis, could you provide the jury with a list of just the item numbers first to start with?
May
Your
I?
Honor.
Do you have your report with you, Ms. Vallier?
I do.
Is there any objection, Mr. Yannetti, to using the report?
No objection at all.
So feel free to use it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So the questioned items labeled as coming from the road were item 7-5, item 7-6, 7-8, 7-9, 7-10, 7-11, 7-12, 7-13, 7-14, 7-15, 7-16, and 7-19. And the known item labeled coming from the passenger side taillight is item 3-1.
Now, Ms. Vallier, within those specific item numbers of how things are labeled at your lab, if there are different pieces associated with the same item, how is it that you label those specifically in this physical match analysis here?
So some of the items had multiple pieces within that item. So I labeled them A, B, C, etc., depending on how many pieces there were.
Now, if you could, please explain to the jury just, again, the process that you followed in your examination of each of those items.
So first I looked at the questioned items, the items labeled as coming from the road. I documented the overall package because they were all packaged in the same container, the same brown paper bag. Documented that individually. Inside of it, there were a bunch of individual brown paper bags. Documented that, and I went one at a time through them, opening each paper bag, taking written notes, taking photos of the items inside. Within each item, I looked to see if any of those pieces fit together. And I cleaned my bench in between the items.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
And Your Honor, of course, I've shown Mr. Yannetti all the photos in advance.
Okay. Is there an objection to any of them,
There is
Mr.
no
Yannetti?
objection, Your Honor.
All right, so why don't we just go ahead and mark them all as evidence?
Your Honor, if I could, I was going to take them item by item.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Ms. Vallier, I'm showing you 4 photographs. You recognize those?
I do.
What do you recognize those to be?
These are photos that I took of item 3-1.
Again, what was the description associated with item 3-1?
Passenger side taillight.
And was that description further give sort of a specific vehicle or license plate associated with the vehicle that the taillight came?
It does. Massachusetts 3GC684.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth will seek to introduce in the minutes the next exhibit A through D.
Right, those are common. That's why I wanted to just mark them all because they're all common. Right?
That's fine. If the court prefers, I can provide them.
Exhibits 170A through 170D.
May I approach with the remainder, Your Honor?
Yes. If you have them in sections, we can do that.
Basically, I'm showing you two more photographs. Just ask if you recognize those.
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos I took of item 7-5.
And again, from your report, what was the description in reference to item 7-1?
Yeah.
Thank you. You're fine. It's just loud.
Okay. Piece of plastic red recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
And Your Honor, the Commonwealth will seek to introduce in the minutes the next exhibit A and B.
Okay.
Exhibit 171A and B.
My apologies, Your Honor. With the court's permission, may I publish some of those?
Yes.
photos? Ms. Gilman, if I could first ask for photograph 2122. And Ms. Vallier, what's up on the screen? That is the bag associated with the passenger side taillight or the known item, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2125. And Ms. Gilman, if you could just enlarge a little bit towards the bottom where the ruler is. Now, Ms. Vallier, what's up on the screen now as far as the sort of notations there? Who made those?
I did.
And how do you know that you were the one who made those?
That's my handwriting, and those are my initials.
So the AMV is for your name, correct?
Yes.
And with respect to each of the items that you photographed, you had photographs that were taken of sort of what was in the evidence bag in total, displayed on your table that you would clean with the solution and everything else, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just zoom out a little bit to show the item. And again, what's up on the screen, that is item 3-1, the known item as far as the tail light from the defendant's vehicle.
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2126. And Ms. Vallier, if you could just describe for the jury, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Those are those same items, just turned over.
And lastly, for this set, Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2135. And again, same item as far as 3-1, the tail light taken from the defendant's vehicle.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could ask for photograph 1905. And Ms. Vallier, as far as with each of these items, you take photographs when they're inside the bag and then once you take them out of the bag, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 1908. And what are we looking at in this photograph?
The contents of item 7-5.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
We'll give you two more photographs. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos of item 7-6.
That's one of the bag and then one when the item is taken out of the bag. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what was the description for item 7-6?
Piece of plastic, clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I appreciate those. Your Honor, Commonwealth will seek to introduce in the minutes the next exhibit A and B.
172 A and B.
With the court's permission, may I publish those to the jury?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 1921, and then photograph 1924. And what's depicted up on the screen is that what you just have before you as the photograph that you took of item 7-6 recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Yes.
Thank you. May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photographs, you review those? Can you recognize those?
I do.
What do you recognize as?
Photos I took of item 7-8.
And one of the bag and then one of the items removed from the bag, is that correct?
Yes.
And what is the description associated with item 7-8?
Piece of plastic, red and clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Commonwealth seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit, A and B. And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish those to the jury.
Yes. Exhibits 173 A and B.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 1931 and then 1934. And Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in just a little on those items, please. And Ms. Vallier, again, what are we looking at in this photograph of item 7 dash? What are we looking at again in this photograph? Excuse me.
Photos of item 7-8.
May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photographs. Those. Can you recognize those?
I do.
Or what do you recognize those?
Photos of item 7-9 and 7-19.
And as far as the first photograph, as far as the bag, and then second with the items taken out of the bag, is that correct?
Yes,
So 7-9 and 7-19 were contained in the same bag.
they were. I then separated them into two separate packages.
And as far as 7-9 and 7-19, respectively, if you could tell the jury what was the description for each of those items.
Item 7-9 was pieces of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Item 7-19 is trace item, black straw, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Your Honor, will seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit, A and B. May I publish, Your Honor?
Hold on.
Oh, forgive me.
174A, 174B. Now you can publish.
My apologies. Ms. Gilman, if I could have 1958, please. And then 1962. And again, Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
The contents of that bag, item 7-9 and item 7-19.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photographs, do you recognize those?
I do.
What do you recognize as?
Photos of item 7-10.
And again, one of the bag and one of the contents of the bag, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what was the description for item 7-10.
A piece of plastic, red, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I want to seek to introduce and admit as the next
Okay.
exhibit, A and B.
Exhibits 175A and B.
May I publish that for the jury, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 1952. And 1956. And again, Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Photo of item 7-10.
Thank you. Gilman, you can take that down. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photographs, do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos of item 7-11.
And again, one photo of the bag and one photo of the items outside of the bag.
Yes.
And again, if you could, please tell the jury what the description is associated with item 7-11.
Piece of plastic, 6, red, clear, and black, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
Commonwealth is introducing the MIT as the next exhibit A and B.
Exhibit 176A and B.
And may I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, 1979 and 1982. Again, Ms. Vallier, I'm sorry, Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in just a little on the items themselves. And Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Photo of item 7-11.
These are photos, again, that you took in the lab during the course of your comparative or physical match analysis, correct?
Yes.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photos, we could look at those. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos I took of item 7-12.
And again, photograph of the bag, photograph of the items outside of the bag.
Yes.
If you could, please tell the jury what's the description of item 7-12.
Trace item, 14 glass and clear plastic, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
The Commonwealth seek to introduce in minutes the next
Okay.
exhibit A and B.
Exhibit 177A and 177B.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2015 and 2018. And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could just zoom in a little on the items. Thank you. And Ms. Vallier, again, can you describe what's depicted up on the screen?
A photo I took of item 7-12.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Two other photographs. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
Photos I took of item 7-13.
And again, one of the bag and then one with the items removed from the bag.
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what is the description for item 7-13.
Piece of plastic, red and black, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I'd love to seek to introduce the next exhibit A and B.
Exhibit 178A and 178B.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, 1997. And 2000. And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could, please zoom in on the items. Thank you. And Ms. Vallier, directing your attention to the screen, can you describe for the jury what is depicted on the screen now?
A photo I took of item 7-13.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Two other photos. Do you recognize those?
I do.
What do you recognize that?
Photos I took of item 7-14.
And again, one of the bag and one of the items removed from the bag.
Yes.
And again, can you please tell the jury what the description is associated with item 7-14?
Pieces of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I'm going to seek to introduce the next exhibit, A and B.
Exhibits 179A and B.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2009 and 2012. And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in on the item. And Ms. Vallier, as far as what's depicted on the screen, again, if you could describe for the jury what that is.
A photo of item 7-14.
May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Other photographs, if you could recognize those.
I do.
And what do you recognize as?
Photos of item 7-15.
And again, one of the bag and one of the items taken from the bag, correct?
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what is the description associated with item 7-15.
Piece of plastic, 3 clear and 5 red, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
The Commonwealth seeks to introduce and admit as the
Okay.
next exhibit A and B.
180A, 180B.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2072.
Yes.
Yes.
And 2077, please. Again, if you could zoom just a little as far as the items are concerned. And Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Item 7-15.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Other photographs, do you recognize that?
I do.
What do you recognize that?
Photos I took of item 7-16.
And again, one of the bag and then one of the contents from the bag, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you could, please tell the jury what was the description associated with item 7-16.
Piece of plastic, red and clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road.
I'm also seeking to introduce the next exhibit.
Exhibit 181A and B.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2036 and 2040. And Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in just a little. Thank you very much. And Ms. Vallier, if you could, please describe for the jury what we're looking at in this particular photograph.
This is item 7-16.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, with respect to each of these items that you examined in your physical match analysis, again, as far as the process is concerned, with the questioned items, what are you doing with reference to each of those questioned items first?
First, I document them as you've seen. I'll see if any of those within the item have a physical match with each other. And then I'll package that away and look at all the questioned items before I compare inter-questioned items to see if there are any physical matches in between all of the 7- items.
And as far as your notes are concerned, what is it that you're noting in reference to each of those items as far as what characteristics of the item are you taking note of?
I'll note the size, the color, and the material.
And what, if any, measurements do you take of each of those respective items as well?
I'll take the length and width of each item.
Now, with respect, starting with item 3-1, the passenger side taillight from the defendant's vehicle, sort of internally within that item 3-1, what did you conclude as far as your physical match analysis within that item alone?
Within item 3-1, I believe 4 of the pieces fit together.
And Your Honor, if the witness may refer to her notes
Yes.
as to, thank you.
Yes, four of the pieces fit together within item 3-1.
And which 4 of the pieces?
Pieces A, B, D, and F.
And as far as the labeling of those pieces of an individual item, let's just start with item 3-1. A, B, D, and F, how are they labeled, and how do you sort of physically label those items?
We have a label maker in the lab, so I'll print out the case number, the item number, and then A, B, C, and my initials, and that goes physically on each of those items, or all of those pieces.
So if any of those items had a sticker on it with a letter or something associated with that, that would be something that you did during the course of your physical match analysis, correct?
Yes.
Now, if I could turn your attention to item 7-5, piece of plastic red recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What did you conclude as far as your physical match analysis just within that single item?
There was no physical match noted among those 3 pieces of apparent plastic.
And when you say no physical match found from the different pieces within that item, what does that mean?
The broken edges of each piece did not align.
So the broken edges of the individual pieces within item 7-5 did not fit together with the broken edges of pieces within item 7-5, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with respect to item 7-6, a clear piece of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What did you conclude based on your physical match analysis just pertaining to that item 7-6?
So this item was 2 pieces of colorless apparent plastic, and there was no physical match noted between those two pieces.
Now, with reference to item 7-8, red and clear plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What did you conclude in regard to your physical match analysis just with the pieces contained within item 7-8?
So there were 14 pieces. Pieces C and D fit together, and pieces E and F fit together.
And when you say fit together, is there a term of art used within your field called a mechanical fit?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean as far as what is a mechanical fit?
So a mechanical fit and a physical match are the same thing. It's when the broken edges align together to show that they were once a single item.
Now, if I could turn your attention to item 7-9, pieces of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What were you able to conclude from your physical match analysis of just the individual pieces contained within item 7-9?
So this item had 3 pieces, and no physical match was found between those.
Turning your attention to item 7-10, red pieces of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What were you able, that is a single item, is that correct?
Correct.
So no physical match because there's nothing to match, it's just one piece, correct?
Correct.
And turning your attention to item 7-11, identified as 6 red, clear, and black pieces of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What did you conclude in regard to your physical match analysis just within those pieces contained within 7-11?
So that item had 6 pieces, and there was no physical match noted among those 6.
Now, turning your attention to item 7-12, which was identified as 14 pieces of glass and clear plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Again, what did you conclude from your physical match analysis just from the various pieces contained within item 7-12?
So there were 14 pieces overall. Pieces B, C, D, F, and K fit together mechanically as one unit. And then pieces E and I fit together mechanically as one unit. And pieces M and N fit together mechanically as one unit.
Now, through your examination of these pieces in particular and other pieces as well, did you note any debris contained on the pieces that you located?
Yes.
And can you say anything as far as what that debris was, or was there any analysis done of that debris specifically?
I just note that there was debris present, and I package it into a tin that's retained with the original packaging.
Now, turning your attention to item 7-13, that was a piece of plastic, red and black, recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And again, just with respect to your physical match analysis of the various pieces of 7-13, what did you conclude?
So that item had 3 pieces, and there was no physical match noted among those 3.
And again, with reference to item 7-14, piece of glass recovered from 34 Fairview Road, that was again a single item, correct?
A single piece, yes.
So I'll turn your attention to item 7-15, 3 clear and 5 red pieces of plastic recovered from 34 Fairview Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what were you able to conclude from your physical match analysis, again, just from the various pieces contained within item 7-15?
So there were 8 pieces in this one. Pieces F and H fit together mechanically.
Turning your attention to, lastly, for this purpose, item 7-16, a piece of plastic, red and clear, recovered from 34 Fairview Road. What were you able to conclude from your physical match analysis just contained within the pieces of that single item, 7-16?
So that item had 7 pieces. Pieces A, C, and D fit together mechanically.
Now, Ms. Vallier, once you had examined each of those pieces individually, what did you do next in your analysis?
Next, I compared all of the inter-questioned, these items 7-5 to 7-16. I compared them to see if there was a mechanical fit amongst those, between those items.
Mr. Lally, is this a good place for our break?
It's perfect. Yes, Your Honor.
All right, jurors, we'll take our morning break. We'll see you back here in about 15, 20 minutes. Thanks for letting you can walk out right with the jurors.
Please rise for the jury.
And can I see counsel for a minute, please? All right, Mr. Alessi, I'll hear you.
You are unmuted.
Sorry about that, guys.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yesterday, Your Honor discussed with the parties, and parties were heard with regard to the issues we have raised with regard to the timing of the May 8th report from Mr. Burgess that the defense received on May 11th. And what I wanted to do, Your Honor, is briefly provide the information Your Honor asked for yesterday, which was how much time we might need under various circumstances. And so I wanted to take a few moments to put that in context. It will only take me a brief amount of time to do so. So, Your Honor, there is a timing issue, but there's most importantly a substantive issue. I will not, of course, go into the detail of yesterday, but the timing really is informed by the substantive issue. And so with regard to the matter, we went back and we looked at more deeply the effect of this timing and this movement of the what has been referred to as clock drift in Mr. Burgess's report that we got on May 11th. I spoke of the significance yesterday, and here's what I would like to add as is relevant to the time we're going to need. I again urge the court to reject it substantively, because what we did was we went and we looked at matters such as the cross-examination of a key witness in this case, Jennifer McCabe. She testified with regard to observing a vehicle at 12:45 a.m. And that's a significant point. I know I don't need to elucidate for Your Honor. All of this is going in significant part, if not total part, to what has been as alleged a collision here, which we vigorously contest. It just no collision ever occurred. But the timing of it, the timing of what's alleged by the Commonwealth is very important. The seconds are important. Literally 1 second can turn not only the Commonwealth's theory completely around in circles and debunk it, but also the jury's analysis of it. And this is the point I wanted to elucidate today, is that the jurors have been provided information, and the defense has aimed its defense on this claim based upon, in large part, timing. So now what we have is on May 11th, Mr. Burgess changing the timing. So what does it affect? Not only witnesses like Jennifer McCabe, who we strategized with regard to, but also my decision to not even cross Trooper Garino, because Trooper Garino had testimony with regard to when Ms. Reed connected with the Wi-Fi at One Meadows, and there's a certain time associated with that. We have Mr. Whiffen, who went through, the Commonwealth went through a timeline, and we believe they went through a timeline for the theory that they had. And I cross-examined Mr. Whiffen extensively with regard to that timeline. There were several defense strategies and effectuations of strategies based upon that timing. So with regard to the substance, Your Honor, and there's more, but I think that's a fair representation. It innervates our entire defense. The question now of Your Honor of how much time it will take the defense to react to Mr. Burgess, I wanted to say it's not only a reaction, but it's a substantive defense analysis, and 3/4 of the effectuation of that has already occurred through our presentation in terms of cross-examination. So we would have to, and we're still evaluating that, revisit all of that. And secondly, we would have to put that into the calculation of all of our witnesses that we've already prepared that are based upon that timeline. So it is a very significant point. And to the extent that the Commonwealth tries to argue, well, you know, we never really committed that much to a certain time period. I again urge the court to look at the report of Dr. Judson Welcher, where he has 1162-2 with a specific range 38 to 43. And even in their range, it's a very small time, which further supports how each second matters in this regard. Now to the answer to the question Your Honor asked yesterday. Again, I urge that it just be rejected and we keep this trial moving in its current pace. To the extent that that does not occur, and again, we urge that it be rejected, the report, because it's a Rule 14 violation, there is no remedy for the defense. However, to the extent, and given Your Honor nonetheless asked me for an answer in time, we would need 4 days to be able to address it. We will not ever be able to recover strategically or substantively from it, given all that's been presented to the jury. And it will be very difficult to figure out how we're going to go present a defense after we've already presented to the jury our defense and our cross-examination. It's not really structurally possible to simply take 4 days and address Mr. Burgess, because we can't go back to all the witnesses I just mentioned and others and start crossing them and eliciting testimony with this new time period in mind. But I wanted to answer the question, Your Honor, respectfully. It would be 4 days for us to even go from where we are now and then try to alter not only witnesses such as Arcca, but DeSogra and Gaffney and other types of witnesses that we have in that regard. So Your Honor, respectfully, that is my response.
All right, does the Commonwealth want to be heard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Respectfully, Your Honor, the defense is very confused. They attempt to confuse the issue. They attempt to confuse Your Honor about what the impact would be. This has never been a change. The government is not changing their timeline. The Commonwealth is not changing any information. The Commonwealth is not offering anything that affects in any way the testimony of witnesses. It's notable in the argument there is no relationship to the facts or the actual report that was provided. The Commonwealth has always provided the data, which they have, and they hadn't a chance to analyze. And the interpretation of the data has been different between the parties. We have been clear from the beginning at the time in which the infotainment system shows that there was a collision. We've been clear. And the data has been clear. That has never changed. That data in the telestream system is based on a clock in the Lexus, which both sides know full well is different than a clock in an iPhone. You can see all the productions of Dr. Welcher's PowerPoint presentation where it shows that time, 12:31:43, has never changed. Also, it has been clear that both sides appreciate that there is a variance between the clock in the Lexus, which leads to that system information, and a clock in an iPhone. In fact, the defense was so aware of it, they hired an expert, Mr. DeSogra, who gave his opinions about that variance. We have never suggested there was not a variance in this case. In fact, we have highlighted the variance. When their expert, Mr. DeSogra, provided a report, we believed that his analysis was wrong. And so we looked at the variance and the data that was available from the telestream system and John O'Keefe's Waze data that was on his phone that was always available to all of the experts in both sides. And when Mr. Burgess looked at the variance at the time of a 3-point turn about 7 minutes before the collision, he simply matched the Waze information on Mr. O'Keefe's phone to that of the information from the telestream and saw that it was a 21 to 29 second variance. all that data was available to the defense because their expert made an improper conclusion is not our fault. This does not change the testimony of anybody. They point to Jen McCabe's text message where she said she thought she saw a motor vehicle out front that evening at 12:45. That is not consistent with the Commonwealth's timeline, but that doesn't change. That favors the defense. It does not change anything to do with Arcca. Arcca has not, as far as I've seen in any reports, ever talked about the variance, just Mr. DeSorga. And so because this is inconvenient for the defense, and because it further focuses the variance that we already discussed and provided, isn't a reason to exclude it. It's not late discovery. It's not a Rule 14 violation. It is further analysis of information that was already provided, opinions that were already provided, and it is in response to their experts' mistake about that variance. There's nothing new here. Nothing has changed.
Go right ahead, Mr. Alessi. The only question I had for you yesterday, for you to respond to today, was the time, so I gave you more leeway.
And
So
you're giving me more leeway, and I appreciate it.
go right ahead.
So 2 items, Your Honor. As I alluded to yesterday, and it's been a point that Mr. Brennan just made. We believe strongly, Your Honor, that at a minimum, there needs to be a voir dire of Mr. Burgess. And we believe strongly there needs to be a voir dire because we have a serious concern that the sequestration order has been violated. He has changed a very key aspect of this matter after the testimony of Mr. Whiffen, after Mr. Whiffen presenting a timeline. In his report, Mr. Burgess, his new purported report of May 8th, he references to align it with Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone. That is the essence of Mr. Whiffen's report, is anchoring in his timeline. He did a whole timeline on Mr. O'Keefe's report. And conveniently, the proposed alteration by Mr. Burgess in his report of this clock drift now makes it very, very close to fitting within Mr. Whiffen's timeline and the theory of the prosecution. At a minimum, we need a voir dire to ask Mr. Burgess, why did he do what he did? Another reason for the voir dire. Mr. Brennan yesterday said, we were surprised to get the report. That further makes great concern as to why Mr. Burgess did what he did. Lastly, Your Honor, with regard to Mr. Brennan's point, and he made it yesterday and I corrected it, he said it again today, that supposedly our witness, Mr. DeSogra, made an error and that we're trying to correct an error of Mr. DeSogra. That is incorrect, Your Honor. Again, Mr. DeSogra was responding to Mr. Burgess's report. Mr. DeSogra's report is entirely saying, okay, Mr. Burgess says this, and therefore the defense says this. Now Mr. Burgess is changing what he is saying. So it is completely incorrect to say that Mr. DeSogra is trying to correct an error. That would require, again, Mr. DeSogra to change what he has done. Final point is this. There was also an issue, Your Honor, and this is extremely important with regard to burden shifting. There's not only the question of should this be allowed at all, there's not only the question of how much time the defense will need, but there's a third and important issue, and that's burden shifting. What Mr. Brennan proposed yesterday was a very irregular process where essentially the Commonwealth gets 3 bites at the apple for a problem that they caused. The problem we're talking about is Mr. Burgess changing a significant part of a timeline. Yes, there was a variance that he had, but he picked a range of the variance. He's now changing the variance. So what the Commonwealth is proposing is that our witnesses go forward, the Aperture gets to wait, they come on, and then the Aperture gets to come on yet again. We would urge.
I did not understand the Commonwealth asking me that. Are you asking me to do that, Mr.
I
Brennan?
appreciate the clarification.
I'm not sure what he's saying, so.
It sounds like DeBrosia or whatever.
His name is DeSogra, yes.
DeSoder, you're suggesting that the Commonwealth suggested yesterday that he testifies first and then the Aperture witnesses?
What I understood was going to happen is Mr. Brennan said yesterday that he that Dr. Welcher cannot come in until after.
No, I didn't understand that. I understood Dr. Welcher, Shannon Burgess, and then Dr. Welcher for everything that you folks received prior, that January 31st, or whatever the date was. And then potentially for all the new Arcca information that came in May 7th, that portion, Dr. Welcher returning on rebuttal for. Not that they were holding back Dr. Welcher completely. Is that correct, Mr. Brennan?
That's the conversation I had. That conversation I wasn't part of.
Yeah, I think you misunderstood that, Mr. Alessi.
So just so I'm clear, what is it that the
Mr. Brennan, all right, this is separate, and I'd really like to give everybody a break here. What is it the Commonwealth is asking to do regarding that?
Regarding Mr. Burgess or Mr. Welcher?
Which, Dr. Welcher?
Dr. Welcher should come in and testify to his PowerPoint, all of his opinions, which address all of the prior representations and opinions of Arcca, although we still don't have any raw information, but we're ready to move forward. Regarding any new opinions, which there is over a dozen new opinions that includes testing, video, experiments, Dr. Welcher should have enough time to review, conduct his own testing, turn it over, and then in rebuttal, address limited to the new issues raised by Arcca.
That's how I understood it, Mr. Alessi.
And that's how I did also, but the question is now with the Burgess changing of the clock drift, how many times is the Commonwealth proposing that Dr. Welcher gets to come in and talk about that? Is he just going to come in and talk about it?
So you talk with Mr. Brennan about that. All right, so I'm all set for this.
There are no changes. There is no changes in the timeline. He keeps trying to portray this as something has changed. Nothing has changed. It's the exact same. He's always said there's a variance. He's been looking into the variance for a long time, and now he has found a method to show the exact variance. It's not changing. There's nothing in the reports that changes as far as the timeline. That's just an attempt to cause fear. There's nothing that has changed. We can look at the reports. It's all the same, always has been, other than now he's identified the mistake of their expert, and that led him to be able to identify the variance, which is helpful and new. And the suggestion that there's been some violation of an order, no good faith basis whatsoever.
Does the Commonwealth oppose a voir dire just on that one issue?
Yes, because it's suggesting that there's a good faith basis for it. Nothing has. Ian Whiffin's report was available to the defense and our experts months and months and months ago. The issue of variance has been an ongoing issue for months. There's nothing that triggers a change in the testimony to adopt or adapt to it. Our timeline has been the same since when we turned it over at the beginning. They cannot point to one thing that has changed between Dr. Welcher, Ian Whiffin, Jessica Hyde, or Shannon Burgess. They are just saying things without a good faith basis. In the reports, show us where something has changed.
Your Honor, to inform you, Your Honor, we would like to print the page in the clock adjustment because what Mr. Brennan says is
yes,
correct.
and I'm happy to any information.
Thank
All right,
Change.
20 minutes.
No.
Thank you.
All rise for the court, please.
Okay. All right. So sorry about before. But my neighbor had an issue that had to be dealt with. And again, you know, there's just bad timing. They always go to fan when I'm like not right here. But everything just went on. We heard the testimony, and this is ridiculous. It is only a little after 11. Oh, morning break. So jury is on morning break anyway, and now there'll be another longer. Didn't she just say another 20 minutes? Yeah. So this whole thing about the timeline has to do with the few seconds. When you look at the cell data that was extracted and has been talked about by two witnesses that we know of so far, Jessica Hyde and Ian Whiffin. I do not believe we have heard from Ms. Burgess yet, or the other witness. Those were, one was a rebuttal witness, and I don't think the other one has come up yet. But basically, they're talking about how those couple of seconds to where they're saying that the incident occurred, and then yet there might have been still some data retrieved on either of the phone extraction from in one of the areas, either on the health app or from the logging of information itself. One in particular, when the phone unlocked, okay, and then they all clocked in that there were some variances between the apps on the phone. Okay, and I believe that's what's going on here, but I can't really be sure because I'm not an expert on this stuff. Neither is the jury. I can imagine just being on the outside as a jury, if they heard any of this, they'd be going bonkers. So thankfully they don't. Thankfully they don't. But I don't know why they're arguing like so much about it. Basically, they're really annoyed, the defense, because Hank Brennan let it slip that he wanted to do some more rebuttal, because when they got the information from Arcca, their witness was able to look at some parts of what they were going to present that were definitely just not right. And they wanted to retest how they did it to show that they were, coming about it the wrong way or something like that. When I'm looking at it, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but correct me if I'm wrong, but with the defense actually getting the leniency to even present Arcca and getting the time that they requested during trial to not even give trial already started and was well in its way before the Commonwealth even got the discovery from what Arcca was going to be presenting in the court. They just received it on May 7th. They responded that they had an issue with some timing in it on their expert witness looked at it, and within a couple of days, like almost immediately, saw an issue with something and wants it to be addressed. So they did reciprocal discovery by updating their own report of their expert witness to the defense. And that's what the defense is having a heart attack about, because they've realized that issue is going to come to light. They don't want it addressed. So they don't want this new amended, issue that the rebuttal witness will be talking about to come in. But I don't understand how they have a right to request that when it's in response to their own discovery, their own witness's testimony. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you got the extended time, why does not the response to it get extended? It's just ridiculous. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe am I looking at it like the wrong way? But that's how it looks to me. If discovery deadlines have already been extended, how dare Alessi jump up and down? And the fact that man even mentions Rule 14 violations is beyond me. After everything that happened with them, with the Arcca witnesses, how they have the nerve to have that even come out of their mouths in regards to this issue is beyond me. Beyond me. I mean, that's thin ice. I mean, they've already got so much grace and resolve in regards to this. I'm just, no, not a Rule 34. Stop it, Jared. Don't throw me off my game. I have to sit up here for another 10 or 15 minutes. But yeah. By the way, that picture, I didn't get to respond. I just saw it during break when I went through my Discord. My God, the mountain, it's so gorgeous. That mountain, that picture in Japan, absolutely stunning. Thank you for sharing it. It must be just awe-inspiring to see everything there. I hope you're having a great trip. So, Mandy, are you still here? If you are, please type in chat if I'm like way off base about these. You and I have been talking these legal things for quite some time, and I have not heard anything from anybody out there about this. you know, all they keep saying is like Hank Brennan's trying to pull a fast one, and I'm like, a fast one in direct response to additional discovery information? How is that a fast one? You know, I stopped at 98 pictures taken just today. Wow. Wow. I can't wait to see. Yeah. I mean, not all 98, of course, but you know what I mean. That was an amazing view of Fuji. And that was just on your phone. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine with a decent camera? Wow. Yeah, right tomorrow, kiddo. It's so late, right? And they did get permission from the court. She did allow it based on, when they filed for this, that, and the other thing. They did take their sweet time, with everything. I think that they're just upset that, I can understand the defense not wanting their case to get dismantled, and it has been like bit by bit. I mean, they haven't even put in their case about the dog bites supposedly and the dog attack, and already the medical examiner has said there were no puncture wounds in that arm. Those were abrasions. Those were very, on the surface scrapes type abrasions. They're not even deep enough to be measured as a scratch, which would happen in an animal attack. I mean, it pretty much made it very unlikely that those were from a dog. You know, uh, if you look up dog attack injuries, not only with the bite, but even with the scratches, they all have depth. And the fact that she didn't measure depth and she indicated there were no punctures, there was no reason to measure depth because there was no depth. That spoke loudly to me. I just don't understand if the jury's going to understand because, the Commonwealth hasn't actually put that out there yet. I mean, not the Commonwealth, the defense hasn't put it out there that those injuries are from a dog bite. I mean, they have a little bit when they asked about Chloe and stuff, and they kind of danced around it a little bit, but they haven't actually brought out witnesses because it's not their turn yet. Hmm. Oh, Jin, I found the folder link from before, and I went into the folder, but I don't see the a rising book, the new book. I only see like the old stuff. I don't think my drive updated it, and I don't think it will unless you send a new link. So I don't know. Maybe you could send me a link again, maybe to the folder, and then when I open it, it'll be updated. Hmm. So, in regards to the rest of the evidence that we heard this morning, which was really just clarification on DNA and trace, um, I think that was a lot of technical information for the jury to hear. From what I saw on the socials, the jury was taking a lot of notes, but I'm not so sure they understand the actual what that actually means in black and white, especially when they're talking about multiple contributors. To me, it makes common sense that his pants that were near the bar, near seats, in and out of the car, would have multiple contributors. He was out in public at a bar that day. I think it speaks volumes when compared to the two shirts that he was wearing, having only one contributor being himself. Also, the fingernails, having only one contributor, his own. Um, it's pretty hard to get into a fight with people and only have the other contributors be on your pants. I mean, seriously. I do know that, the defense with David Yannetti was trying to infer that those contributors, they could have been anybody. So that might be like, without saying it, he was inferring that was kind of like, means that they could have been anybody and that, probably, other people, rough after whatever, that the fight could have occurred, which is one of the conspiracy one of their alternate theories to the crime was that John O'Keefe received his injuries by being beaten up by either Brian Albert or Brian Higgins or a combination of the two. That's the floated theory from what I understand. But would he not have defensive wounds, or at least DNA on his hands, on his fingernails, or his shirt? Because people, unless they only beat him up in the legs, they just, and that's kind of weird. I mean, that would be very, very odd. Thank you, Jen. I mean, I don't think I'm thinking about that one a little bit too crazy there. I mean, for third-party culprit to actually be floated out there with any credibility, I mean, you need some kind of substantial evidence. I mean, they're looking at the 82 steps in 20 seconds as evidence that he went into the house. Granted, they can have their experts say whatever they want about that time, but it pretty much, when Jessica Hyde had the best answer in regards to that. You need more than just what the health app says to confirm that anything actually happened. You need more than just what one part of the app says on the extraction of the phone to make any solid conclusion about anything that happened. And if it only registers on the health app, it may not have actually meant steps. It could have been any kind of movement. You'd have to look for something to collaborate in. Since there are no footsteps in the snow, there are no witnesses seeing him go into the house. There is nobody saying that he was in the house with them. It could be footsteps, but it definitely wasn't going into the house. Could it be that he fell back? Here's another scenario I thought, and let me know if you think this is possible. In the seconds that this incident occurred, we haven't heard it yet, but we are supposed to be hearing from the Lexus's computer itself that she did reverse in the time frame when her and John O'Keefe were in the same area. And if that did happen, could it be not that it didn't really hit him hard, but it was starting to snow and the ground was frozen? Could we have jumped back? Could he have moved back? Could he have got pissed at her and threw the glass at the back of the car and then slipped and fell back and hit his head? Could it be that the impact of the car, backing into him wasn't that much? Maybe he grabbed it, like he smacked the bumper himself, right? Like violently, hey, whack it. Like, what the heck you think you're doing? B, backing into me. But he didn't actually fall at that point, which would account for the several seconds before his phone went completely still. Meaning, he went to back on, could he have fell and hit his head? Could he have bent over to pick up a piece of the glass and then she backed in a little bit and he fell? It's like startled. Could it be? Could this incident have happened without a major impact of the car? True. It could have. Would she still be responsible? Yes, there was an accident. She still drove away and left him. I'm going to say it again. Although I think that she's got real accountability here for this incident, I don't think she intended to murder him. I think murder's an overreach. I do. She's a horrible defendant. She's not easy to like at all. Actually, she's very easy not to like. She comes off as entitled and prissy and not relatable, not very sympathetic. She does things that are horrible that we have seen, attacking witnesses. She's on her laptop day in and day out during court, sending what she wants people on YouTube and in the socials to actually say about what's going on. She is very controlling on everything around her. We heard the text messages. We didn't like how she talked with johnokeefe. We didn't like how she speaks of the children. We didn't like the fact that she was stepping out on someone she says that she was in a relationship with. But, she's there all the time and helping him for 2.5 years with the kids. But it's okay to step out on him because, they're not married yet. Her idea about things and the way she presents herself, even watching her documentaries, the way she speaks, the way it's all her. Like I said, not likable. At least from my impression. I don't have much sympathy. But that doesn't mean I think she's a murderer. No, I think she's like selfish and entitled. Yeah. Do I think this all could have been over if she just took accountability for she was not sure she hit anything, she did not intend to do anything, and just copped to the manslaughter? She probably wouldn't have got any jail or anything. She might have got just a DUI charge or something, leaving the scene of an accident. Because if they have the evidence that they have now, how are they going to prove she did anything intentionally? If she at least copped to the fact that, she left him there. Because that's a fact. She left him there. She never saw him go into the house the way she says. Because she has also said she didn't. So I tend to believe her first statements. Because everything that happened months later was all cover-up. I tend to believe what she said in the beginning. I did not see him go into the house. At the hospital, I may have hit something. I think I may have bumped into something. To her father. Finding him on the side of the road and then being in shock. Granted, she was upset. She was drunk. She was upset. She's still suffering the effects of the alcohol and being altered. Extremely upset and saying, could I have hit him? Even if she didn't say, I hit him, as exaggerated or taken out of context. Yes, it could be. But even the fact that she said, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Is it possible? All of that and being as upset as she was, all indicates that she knows that she reversed that car and that something happened. But that she got pissed off at him and left. And it was because she wasn't invited to go inside the house. They argued before he got out of that vehicle. I'm almost positive of it. They either broke up, he may have confronted her about the Higgins thing, or he may have just said, I don't want to put up with this stuff. And she said, well, fine, then don't. And he said, then don't come in. And he got out of the vehicle and went around the back of it to go across. If he had gone around the front of the vehicle, this would be a different story, wouldn't it? How mad was she? Would she have terrorized him by inching forward? One of the triggers is that he took her drink. He took her drink because of how she was acting. He took her drink because she was driving. Well, he really didn't have a lot of room to talk there, as drunk as he was too. But the fact that he took her drink wasn't to bring it inside for her so she could come right in. Because that doesn't make any sense based on her story that she said she asked him to go in and see if she was really welcome. Why would he take both drinks to go in, or take her drink to go in then? She could have very well brought it in with her. I mean, he took that drink because she shouldn't be drinking anymore. Yeah. She took a piece of glass from his nose in the morning. Yes, and if that glass was still in his nose, the medical examiner may have been able to speculate more that perhaps he was hit with something. you know, and perhaps, I don't know if Karen turned in the exact piece of glass and they're going to able to identify if it was from the glass of all that they had on the scene. It's presumed to be. Did she just toss it aside? I mean, they have all pieces, but there was also glass on the bumper, small pieces of glass on the bumper of the car, which granted would still be there even though it was driving around because, the Commonwealth has a point. There was snow holding everything in place. Remember when the incident happened, it had just started to snow. The ground was frozen. It may have been a bit slippery because it just started to snow. There was only a dusting still at the time. They have not yet, Maggie. I see your question up there. I'm sorry I missed it before. Maggie asked, did they present the Lexus black box? Not yet, that I have heard of. Not yet. Those witnesses have not testified yet. I'm sure that that's coming. And once that does, with the timing and everything, this is new testing that was done that apparently has, based on the motions that were filed back and forth and how much was tried to be kept out of court, I do believe that it's pretty damning evidence. It's more concrete than the evidence that was presented in the first trial, from what I understand, in regards to the testing of the Lexus. It was a whole new testing of it, a new way to do it that was done after Hank Brennan took over as special prosecutor. So that would be new evidence, additional evidence. Some of it will be the same, and some of it will be new because it was retested. Everything was redone, re-extracted completely. We watched the hearing previously at the beginning, sometime in the middle of last year, to where the defense was saying they needed to be there, they needed their expert there, and they did. They arranged for all of this testing. Hank Brennan actually petitioned the court to be able to retest everything and to be allowed extra time, and they got it. And they cooperated with the defense the whole time, and everything was turned over. And it seems that there's a lot of damning evidence in there, especially the way Hank Brennan is laying out the case. Apparently, the timing of the registers of what happened will correlate with the phone extraction to when John O'Keefe's phone stopped moving and when the temperature started to go down on his phone. It never went up, which is another new evidence. The phone extraction of the battery temperature going further into what they could get from John O'Keefe's phone to help solidify the timeline. But there's no doubt in the timeline that the minutes that they're talking about, John O'Keefe and Karen Reed were in the same place. They were both there at the time. That the timeline secures that between all of both of their phones and the vehicle. Eyewitness reports of people seeing the actual Lexus outside of the house. More than one. And that's what is important to notice about the second trial. In laying out the evidence in the timeline, Hank Brennan has been very precise to make sure multiple witnesses confirm each timeline fact of point. Placing the Lexus outside the front of 34 Fairview in approximate time of when the incident happened that caused John O'Keefe's death, and that would be the head injury hitting the ground. However that happened to hit the ground, that's the incident we're talking about, okay? So we put them both in the same place, and he has provided multiple witnesses to show that. The other young people in the vehicle showing up to the party to pick someone up, seeing Karen actually arrive there with John O'Keefe, not seeing John O'Keefe in the car. Okay. McCabe looking out the door, approximate timing, texting back and forth, are you here yet? Stuff like that. Timing, timeline timing, putting them right there, Then you have John O'Keefe's phone, Karen Reed's phone, and then we will have the Lexus data. There was other witnesses who could testify about the vehicle being there when they came and they left. The young lady who was leaving, who did not see anything. The other young lady who left, who thought she saw something by the pole, some mound, some dark shape, but wasn't really concerned. And how the snow was increasing at that point in visibility, it would be difficult. Tomorrow Kiddo says, I got the impression, let me just pull that up so I can read it better because it's tiny. I got the impression that they were done. He wanted to end it, and she was in limerence, romantic infatuation characterized by obsessive thoughts. Yes, yes, she was. She's also a control person. She had also been talking about not being happy. We saw that evident in the text messaging with Higgins, that she was also disenchanted with the relationship at the time. But it does seem that she wanted to be the one to break it off and be in control. It was going to be the other way. John O'Keefe was not going to walk away from her. She was going to walk away from him. It does seem that that was a bone of contention with her. And based on what I've seen in what would be considered a stressful situation right now, like being on trial for murder, she does seem to be a bit controlling. And maybe she's not in everything, but she seems to be overly controlling in the courtroom. And in those text messages, the day of the incident, when they were texting back and forth before they went out. Yeah, she was unhappy with his behavior, his actions, the situation in general. But she's been involved with a man with kids for 2.5 years, and she's complaining because he has kids 2.5 years later. Did she think they would vanish? Did she think it was temporary? Like, I don't get it. Yeah. When we talk about the medical examiner's testimony yesterday and the day before, it's really important how the jury looks at it, because they could look at that as probable, as reasonable doubt, because she never said that, the injuries were related to being hit by a vehicle. Well, she never said they were related to being any other kind of altercation. But she clearly said that his manner of death was because of the head wound. The falling back in that hypothermia contributed greatly. So it's going to be how much the jury looks at it, as to whether that's just credible for what it is and what she should have said. I have 2 adults, raised them on my own, and I've had males who wanted to date me and wanted to negotiate the children, and I laughed and I laughed and I walked away. I don't negotiate the children. How do you negotiate children that already exist? Like, like seriously, like that cracks me up. Tomorrow, kiddo, I'm sure it did you too. Like the audacity. Yes, we want to negotiate the children. Yeah, no. Mm-mm. It's ridiculous. They're already in existence. Like, what the heck? Yeah. I'm sorry that's inconvenient for you, but get on with your own life. Like, take your bad self out of here. Like, seriously. Yeah. And this is also speculations, because, it's really hard to put ourselves in a situation of a personal relationship with 2 people. I mean, we don't know what's really going on there. They were both that day quite snippy with each other. It did seem that they've been fighting for quite some time. There are references to it. The niece testified to it. In the last trial, the nephew did too. Just because when they're out in public it's not shown doesn't mean it didn't exist. Their own words kind of showed us it did. The January situation at New Year's in Aruba showed that there was a lot of tension to begin with and a lot of mistrust. He was talking to someone and got accused of all kinds of stuff. And I do believe that they are petitioning to bring that in now because Alan Jackson opened the door with one of the witnesses, specifically about the Higgins thing and stepping out, because it was in the text messages and they addressed it. So there we go. Be careful what you wish for, huh? It does seem that the prosecution's, the Commonwealth case this time, taking a different angle of approaching the timeline in repeating steps, like 2 steps forward and we go back 1 to make sure you got it. We put another witness in there to ump it up a little bit. It's been pretty solid. I would say the testimony we've been hearing today, and it's been a bit boring for the jury if you don't understand this kind of stuff. And I will say that I don't. I do understand the testing. I know that DNA is very important. I do that DNA was found on the light. He touched it, whether it was with his hand to brace himself from getting hit, whether whatever. Could it be that he threw the glass at the light and that's what broke it? Could it be that he hit that light when she backed up into him like, how dare you? Well, there's no, maybe not, because there's no injury on his hand. There's nothing from the glass that would be a cut. There are not really a lot of bruising from hitting it, with any kind of aggression. I'm just, there are so many ways this could have happened. Everybody says it could not have happened with her actually hitting him. And I'm like, yeah, it was a very slippery, bad weather day. She did not have to hit him hard to have him go down. In my eyes, all she had to do was back up as if she was going to hit him. But that taillight was smashed, and we need to know how. She implied that the blunt force injury of the head probably caused him to be most likely number one reason he died. Also cross-examined after if he could have moved or did he die instantly. What did she say to that? I don't think she said he moved. I think he may have been in a coma and combined with the cold that he died. Yes, because she said it was severe, like it was severe. Yeah, I don't think once he hit his head, I don't think he got up. And I don't think she testified that he could. But I don't think she was clear about like how long that would take. And I think that's where some of the reasonable doubt comes in, Could he have moved his phone to try to call for help? I mean, even just for a few seconds, maybe. But his phone was under him. Like he fell on it. You know what I mean? But that could also have been if he was in a different position and then rolled over onto it after, I don't know. I'm really curious to see the accident reconstruction theories, like if they're actually going to give us like how they think it happened. Oh, we're moving again. Now we're at the other one. I think they're coming back since we're at fan 2. Yep, here we go.
Closed session, please be seated.
speak.
Okay. We're back with our witness.
All right, so Mix Vallier, I'm going to ask you that you speak right into your microphone when you answer, if you could, please.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Lally, go right ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Vallier, we talked about sort of the physical match or mechanical fit analysis that you did with regard to each of the items individually, correct?
Yes.
And can you explain for the jury the process that you undertook in your physical match analysis between different item numbers?
So between different items, amongst the questioned ones, I only compared the pieces that were large enough to have a label on them. Some pieces were quite small. I utilized several benches and divided them up into sections for each item, and individually pulled out all of those pieces. And then I had another bench where I did the actual comparison. I started with all the pieces of the same color and looked to see if any of those had potential edges that could match.
Now, with respect to items 715 and 716, did you do a physical match analysis between those two separate items?
May I look at my notes?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
And what, if any, conclusions did you come to in relation to your physical match analysis between item 715 and item 716?
Two pieces from item 7-15, F and H, fit mechanically with two pieces from item 7-16, F and G.
And what, if any, conclusion were you able to draw with reference to the physical match between pieces from item 715 and pieces from item 716?
Those four pieces were at one time together as part of a larger unit.
Now, Ms. Vallier, what physical match analysis did you do with reference to items 7-6 and 7-11?
So one piece from item 7-6, piece B, fit mechanically with one piece from item 7-11, piece D. So those two pieces were at one time together as a larger unit.
And Ms. Vallier, with reference to items 7-8, 7-9, and 7-16, what, if any, conclusions were you able to draw from any physical match analysis you did between pieces from those three items?
So two pieces from item 7-8, pieces C and D, one piece from item 7-9, piece A, and one piece from 7-16, piece E were found to have a mechanical fit. So those pieces were at one time together as a larger unit.
Lastly, for this section, at some point, did you do a physical match analysis for the glass pieces in items 7-12 and 7-14?
Yes.
And what conclusions were you able to draw from your physical match analysis between 7-12 and 7-14?
There was no physical match between the glass pieces from, or parent glass pieces from 7-12 and the glass piece from item 7-14.
Now, Ms. Vallier, are you aware that there was an additional analysis that was done with respect to glass pieces and other glass pieces that you didn't examine in your analysis at your lab?
I know that there was other trace work done. I'm not sure exactly what the work was.
Okay. And do you know who performed that additional trace work?
Christina Hanley.
And who is she to you as far as in reference to your work at the lab?
She's my supervisor.
Now, with regard to each of these items individually, they came as labeled in individual bags as we demonstrated on the screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to those bags, did you note any particular date associated on the front of those bags?
That's documented in my photos.
And all I'm asking here is that with respect to each of those bags of items, whether they be 3-1, 7-4, 7-5 or 6 or 8, many of those bags had different dates on them, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you received those items in that bag, you essentially removed the items from those individual bags, placed them on the table, and examined them, correct?
Yes.
And that examination included a microscopic examination?
Yes.
Now, with respect to any of those items, there were some items that pieces within the same bag that had the same date on that bag did not fit together mechanically, correct?
Yes.
However, there were items from one bag collected on one date that did fit mechanically with items from another bag collected on another date. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, if I could turn your attention to item 3-1. Again, for the jury, what is the physical description associated with item 3-1?
Item, passenger side taillight, Massachusetts 3GC684.
Now, did you perform a physical match analysis with pieces from item 3-1, 7-5, 7-6, 7-8, 7-10, 7-11, 7-12, 7-13, 7-14, 7-15, and 7-16?
I compared them, yes.
And what, if any, conclusions did you come to from your analysis, your physical match analysis between item 3-1 and all of the items beginning with the number 7?
There was a physical match with, do you want me to list?
If you
all
could,
of them?
please.
Okay. So 2 pieces from item 7-5, 4 pieces from item 7-8, 1 piece from item 7-10, 4 pieces from item 7-11, 2 pieces from item 7-12, 2 pieces from item 7-13, 4 pieces from item 7-15, and 4 pieces from item 7-16 were found to fit mechanically with item 3-1.
And what, if any, conclusions were you then able to draw from your physical match analysis between item 3-1 and each of those respective items beginning with the number 7?
Those pieces were once together as part of a larger unit.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
There, I'm showing you 3 additional photographs. Do you recognize what's depicted in those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those?
This is a comparison between item 3-1 and those pieces from all of the other pieces.
Your Honor, Commonwealth, seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit A, B, and C.
Is there any objections to any?
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
It's 182A and C.
And may I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2096. Ms. Gilman, yes. If you could even zoom in just a little bit more on the item itself. Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
So those pieces that I labeled from item 7 all of those, they all fit together mechanically into this piece.
And as far as earlier, you were testifying as far as the label maker and the different various pieces that you would label throughout the process of your physical match analysis. Do you see these in this photograph as well?
I do.
And where are they located with reference to the reconstructed piece above?
They're those little white rectangles on the piece.
So what's depicted here is the mechanical fit between items 7-5, 7-6, 7-8, 7-10, 7-11, 7-12, 7-13, 7-14, 7-15, and 7-16, correct?
Not items 7-8 and 7-14, but the other ones, yes.
And why not those two?
They didn't fit mechanically with the other pieces.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2150. And again, if you could just zoom in a little. And Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
So on the right side was that piece that was just shown. And on the left side is item 3-1.
And lastly, Ms. Gilman, if we could have 2151. Again, if you could zoom in on that item just a little. And Ms. Vallier, what are we looking at in this photograph?
So that's that right piece on top of the tail light from the previous photo.
And is this the mechanical fit that you were testifying about earlier with reference to item 3-1, the tail light housing, and all of the various pieces that were found in 34 Fairview, starting with the number 7?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Ms. Vallier, lastly, in reference, did you also receive some debris from John O'Keefe's clothing?
Yes.
And Mr. Officer, we can have the lights back on. Thank you very much. And what did you find contained within that debris from John O'Keefe's clothing?
So it was 5 different items. So it was debris collected from, labeled as coming from the clothing. There was mostly debris, some apparent fibers.
Were there any pieces of apparent plastic contained within the debris?
Yes.
Was there dirt contained within the debris?
Yes.
And that debris was labeled as an item 17-18.18. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And what is it that you did with the debris from the gray long sleeve shirt and the orange t-shirt?
So those were all packaged in like glassine folds. And I looked through it and documented it.
When you say you documented it, did you look at it under a microscope?
Yes.
So you did an examination under a microscope, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you measure some of those items contained within the debris?
Yes.
Specifically, did you measure items of apparent clear plastic contained within the debris?
Yes.
And what did you measure those items to be?
The piece of clear apparent plastic was approximately 1/8 inch by 1/16 inch.
And once you had conducted your preliminary analysis of those items, where did those items go?
I did no further examination on this myself. Christina Hanley might have examined some of these further.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Yannetti?
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to first talk fairly briefly about your reconstruction of the taillight to which you've testified. At the outset, by the way, that was item 7-3.1. Am I correct?
Sorry, for which one?
That's the taillight, this 7-3.1. Am I correct?
3-1, I believe.
7-3-1?
The taillight is item 3-1.
Oh, 3-1. I'm so sorry. Okay. With regard to that particular item, your lab has different departments, correct? Criminalists who do different things, correct?
Yes.
You are aware that there are scientists within your lab who do DNA analysis, for instance, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And with regard to the order of processing items, is the DNA analysis done before or after you get the item?
It's usually before.
Okay. In this case, it was before. Am I correct?
I believe so.
Were you made aware that there were 3 contributors of DNA to that taillight, 3-1?
How long were you made aware of that?
No.
Once you reconstructed the taillight, you'll agree with me that it was missing a piece, correct? Or pieces?
There was an empty spot on the overall reconstruction, yes.
Were you ever provided with any pieces of taillight that would have filled in that missing spot?
No.
Were you ever provided or told about any pieces recovered from 1 Meadows Ave in Canton?
No.
Were you ever told about a collision at 1 Meadows Ave in Canton? In any case, you'll agree with me, there was no glass in that taillight at all, correct?
Within the taillight, I classified them as apparent plastic pieces.
There's no glass as part of the taillight, correct?
I mean, it depends on what you call, like, the bulbs usually have glass as far as I'm aware.
Those are very, very thin glass though, correct? Those bulbs?
Yes.
All right. Now, your lab received clothing in connection with this case. You've testified to that, correct?
I received the debris labeled as coming from the clothing. I never saw the clothing at all.
Right, but you're aware that your lab received clothing before the debris got to you, correct?
Yes.
And your understanding was that that was John O'Keefe's clothing in which he was found on January 29th of 2022, correct?
It's labeled as coming from him. I'm not sure of the date that it was found.
Okay. You understand the procedure of that goes on at your lab when it receives evidence?
Yes.
And you know that once clothing is brought to your lab, it's given evidence numbers, correct?
Yes.
And then one of your colleagues at the lab handled the clothing and or examined it, correct, before it came to you?
Yes.
And your understanding is that one of your colleagues retrieved debris from those items of clothing and then packaged it in a fold before it got to you, correct?
Yes.
You then open up the fold and you look at the debris, correct?
Yes.
You never saw that debris inside the clothing, correct?
Correct.
And the pieces of clothing that come in are given evidence numbers when your lab receives them, correct?
Yes.
For instance, the orange t-shirt was given or was named item number 7-17.
Yes.
And the gray long sleeve shirt was item 7-18, correct?
Yes.
And your lab is accredited, correct?
Yes.
There is a complete chain of custody from the moment the clothing was brought to the lab to when the debris was removed from the clothing, ultimately to when you're in court today handling the items, correct?
Yes. Our in-lab chain of custody extends from when we receive it to when the submitting agent it is returned to the submitting agency.
Okay. And you have complete confidence that the chain of custody at your lab is effective at making sure that the evidence does not get lost or mixed up or contaminated, right?
I mean, chain of custody is meant to track where a piece of evidence is. The evidence unit also does inventories and audits to make sure that things are where they're supposed to be.
And you have confidence in your lab's chain of custody policies and procedures, correct?
Yes.
But you'll agree that your lab cannot control who handled the clothing before it arrived at your lab, correct?
Yes.
There are times in which crime scene technicians or criminalists from your lab actually participate in the search for evidence at a crime scene, do they not?
Some of the people at the lab are crime scene responders, yes.
There are times when they actually take custody of evidence. Again, I'm talking about people from your lab, professionals. They take custody right from the crime scene and transport that evidence to your lab, correct?
Yes.
In those circumstances, your lab would have a complete chain of custody from discovery to seizure to testing or whatever comparison you're doing until you release the items, correct?
Yes, but the electronic chain of custody doesn't start until that item is entered into our LIMS system at the lab.
Right, but when it's entered in, it would be entered in as having been seized by somebody from your lab, correct? In the hypothetical that I'm giving you.
Yeah, there's an evidence submission form that says that this crime scene responder submitted it to the laboratory.
There are other cases, however, when the evidence is brought to your lab by the police, correct?
Yes.
Local departments have access to your lab?
For evidence drop-off, yes.
The state police have access to your lab for evidence drop-off?
Yes.
And in this case, it was not a criminalist or other professional from your lab who seized the clothing and brought it to your lab, correct?
I'm not sure.
Do you have a record of that in your report in terms of who it was that brought the material to your lab?
I could look at the evidence submission form to see who.
With the court's permission?
Yes. Okay.
Is this sidebar 3 or 4? I think it's 4, isn't it? Or was there one just a break and not a sidebar? See, I'm a little confused about when I had to step out to enter the door and they went to the fan. Was that sidebar and break? I thought it was break because it did go long, and then they were doing oral arguments on the motion of the timing issue between Aperture and Arcca thing, you know. Is this his gotcha moment? I don't know, but we've got a ceiling fan, so it's definitely a sidebar. Tomorrow, kiddo, do you think we have 4? Is this number 4 for sidebar or number 3? I'm trying to. Yeah. It's been such a morning.
Do you have that with you now, please?
I'm gonna call it 4.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Yannetti.
Having reviewed your reports, can you testify to the jury about who it was that brought this evidence into the lab?
Thank you, Maggie.
You can tell us.
Okay. So submission 7, all the items that are 7- was submitted by Trooper Michael Proctor.
Were you aware of the date of the incident that gave rise to this case?
Yes.
And what was that date?
January 29th, 2022.
Were you aware that the clothing that you received was seized from the Good Samaritan Hospital that very day?
No.
What date was the clothing brought to your lab?
March 14th, 2022.
So that means that your chain of custody at the lab began on March 14th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that was about 6 weeks after the date of the incident, January 29th of 2022?
Yes.
And of course, you can't speak to the chain of custody from January 29th to March 14th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And you have no information and do not know why Michael Proctor waited 6 weeks to bring this clothing to your lab, do you?
Sustained.
Do you know where Michael Proctor stored this clothing during that 6-week period?
No.
Do you know how often he was alone with access to the clothing during that 6-week period? Do you know if he had access to pieces of red or clear taillight during that 6-week period?
Sustained. Move on, Mr. Yannetti.
You were not present when the clothing was seized, correct?
Correct.
You did not have custody of this clothing from January 29th of 2022 to March 14th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
You do not know what was done with the clothing before it arrived at your lab, correct?
You've covered this, Mr. Yannetti. Move on, please.
One last question. You cannot vouch for how the clothing or taillight pieces were handled before they got to your lab, correct?
I cannot.
Anything further, Mr. Lally, or are you all set? Okay. I'm not curving it.
No. Very good.
Mr. Lear, there is a separate evidence unit contained within the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory, correct?
Correct.
And fair to say you have absolutely nothing to do with that, correct?
I'm not a part of that unit.
And so your responsibility as far as chain of custody is concerned is from when you retrieve the item during your analysis and then when you return the item to the evidence unit, correct?
Correct.
And from that analysis that you performed, you found that there were 10 different items, starting with the number 7, that were a mechanical fit to 3-1, the taillight housing from the defendant's vehicle, correct?
If it's 10 items, I don't have, I can count them.
Okay. As far as all those items beginning with 7 that you went through or elucidated on your direct examination, each of those were a mechanical fit to each other and then to the taillight housing in 3-1.
The pieces that were previously stated, yes.
Nothing further.
All right, Mr. Lucia, you are all set. All right, so jurors, that is it for today. I'm told when I spoke with counsel earlier that we are still on track. I have to tell you those same cautions. Please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, please disregard it and let us know. Be extra careful with your social media use. And also, I just want to remind you, next week, Thursday is a half day and Friday is a day off. All right, so we'll see you on Monday.
Please rise for the jury.
Okay. Well, so no afternoon stream, no afternoon court. I forgot that on Fridays they dismiss early. I think this is the second time. I think it's court schedule. Maggie, I do believe last Friday they did the same thing. I should have paid attention, but I'll double check and get a better answer for next week. But we are breaking for the day. For those of you that follow some of my other true crime, we will have an update on the Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy.
Okay.
Oh, they're back. Hold on.
So before we recess, I appreciate that council provided me with the information. Mr. Alessi, I got the 2 reports that you had that were incorporated and what the Commonwealth had given me a few minutes before, but I appreciate that it was pointed out here. We've had full argument on this yesterday and today. My findings for the record are that the defendant has not persuaded me of undue surprise or unfair prejudice by this information, and I don't find that there's delayed disclosure. Of course, all of this is ample game for cross-examination, certainly as to what Mr. Burgess knew, what he looked at, why he looked at it, when he looked at it, why he changed his report, and violation of the sequestration order is all for cross-examination, and I will give you a lot of leeway with that, Mr. Alessi, but I'm not having a voir dire on that. Mr. Alessi, I can tell you, obviously, you've got a great facility for cross-examining on the underlying information here. You've done fulsome cross-examinations. I have every confidence you can do it here again. But if after the direct, you demonstrate that you need further time, I'll certainly hear you on that. And more importantly, perhaps, if you feel that the testimony of Jen McCabe and the others that you've mentioned is critical and that you need to recall them, I'll hear you on that as well.
So regarding Dr. Welcher, as my understanding, the request yesterday was for, and it's been a request, I think, a few days. We've addressed it at sidebar, and I found that it wasn't the right time. Let's see how much Dr. Welcher could go through. I understand Dr. Welcher will testify in the Commonwealth's case in chief next week or so, Mr. Brennan.
Hopefully next week, if not
All right.
the day after the holiday.
And that will be for all of the material that was provided to the defendant initially, right, by the Commonwealth's discovery deadline?
Correct.
And what you're asking for is that after Arcca testifies, the new information, you're asking for rebuttal, right?
Yes, limited to the new information.
All right, so I would allow under these circumstances a limited rebuttal, and we can define the scope after we hear the testimony of Arcca. So those are my rulings. Your objections were noted. I'll see everybody on Monday.
All rise for the court, please.
Yeah. Now that sounds reasonable. That's how I thought it should go. He's only asking to address whatever new they put in fairly, right? You know, everybody got extended discovery on this issue with Arcca and Aperture. Like, it just, yeah. I can imagine the defense is not happy. You are correct, Liam. They are not going to be happy about this. They're the ones that filed the motion to stop Hank Brennan from having extended rebuttal on the new Arcca information, which they just, yeah, wow. Anyway, as I was saying before she came in to discuss, I am going to do a true crime and legal update tonight on the Sean Combs P. Diddy trial, the federal criminal case for RICO charges in the sex trafficking. We're going to do day 4 and 5, Thursday and Friday, testimony update and review of evidence to date. I believe I've got that scheduled for 9 o'clock. I'm going to go delete this afternoon stream. And on that, I hope everybody has a good night. Thank you for keeping me company and joining me all week on this. And if you don't have any other questions, you know, I think that's going to be it for the day. I think you're right. Liam. Alessi did get a chance yesterday. He went on, didn't he? He just, oh my. I was like, what? What really got me, which I know, Liam, the audio went out right when I was talking, and I just ended the stream. So hopefully you can hear me now. But basically what I was saying is exactly what I think you would have been saying. It is quite ironic to hear Alessi jumping up and down and screaming about, you know, Rule 14 violations when it comes to this issue with Arcca, after all of the grace that they were granted and all of the violations that they obviously had. Like, seriously. And I think you can hear the thunder. I'm going in for a big thunderstorm right now. So I'm going to end this before my internet company or the electric company ends it for me, because there's a huge storm overhead. But thank you all again for keeping me company, some of you all week. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back Monday with more. Okay. Yeah, he was very upset, wasn't he, Maggie? He was like spitting. He was like really, yeah, he was over the top. He was definitely. I didn't see anything kindly about him in his cross-examination and or his actual oral argument in regards to this issue on the socials. Like, I was surprised. Those that normally support, you know, the defense, even they were saying it was a swing and a miss, and it was actually pathetic. He is the Rule 14 emperor of a minute. Yes, I believe you. I believe you, Liam, actually. So I'm going to be ending this now. Thank you again. Don't forget to like, share, comment. Please hit the back of the videos. I do appreciate hearing from everybody. It does help the algorithm, and it does help me do this to see the interaction. That's what I enjoy the most about all of this, is talking to all of you about it, sharing your ideas, sharing your perceptions and your questions and information in regards to everything that we're hearing in the court. it is why I made this my hobby, actually. And if you are following me for the P. Diddy case, I would appreciate you sharing that also and doing something, because the P. Diddy case is going to be considered by YouTube to be shocking content, and it's going to be pulled from the algorithm. I've got my email, no matter how I fought it, talking about the case and describing some of the testimony that's given is just not going to go over well at all. So whatever you guys can do to help get it out there, I appreciate it. And I'll see you all later tonight and on the weekend for some other fun things, All right. Good night.